fantastic weekend of Siege rolls on here at the Xenon Gaming Series Spring Burst as we've got another elimination matchup on deck. My name is Navical, being joined by Goose, and we are very pleased to be bringing you more action. And we've had an exciting weekend so far, and let me tell you, I'm really looking forward to getting into Group A here as we've got Outlast, Exosiris, TEMPR, and SBL in this group. And well, Thursday we saw a very exciting first three games of Siege. Just break it down for us, Goose.
Yeah, as you can see, the first couple of days, we saw both teams were seeing today, Outlast and TEMPR. And if you're not aware of the current match we have tonight for our last stream or last cast of tonight is an elimination match. So the previous two games for both of these teams, they both lost. But as you can see by the score, it was a lot closer of a game for TEMPR against, I would say, a very equal opponent that Outlast went to. Again, totally different maps. But as I said before, tonight is an elimination game. So not only has it been really, I wouldn't say special, but it's been, entertaining. It will continue to be entertaining. The stakes are probably the highest it can get.
Yeah, and indeed, looking at Outlast and TEMPR, like we said, it's going to be an elimination match, and the winner will be facing SBL tomorrow. But just taking a look at the teams, we're going to start with Outlast. And, well, this roster is very familiar to some people. I mean, it's a different logo, a different name, but the players are all the same from a team that competed in Element 2. That was Dilemma. It's Austin, Juve, Papoa, Zonky, and Rai. And, well, we saw they lost 7-3 in their opening matchup, and it was on Clubhouse, but that scoreline was a little bit misleading, Goose. They really struggled on their defenses, right?
Yeah, no, most definitely. And if you're looking at the attacking and defensive win rate percentage and you're kind of confused, there is no confusion to be had. They lost 7-3. All three of the rounds they won was in the first half when they had a 3-3 half. They won 3 attacking rounds and then went on to win not even one defensive round, losing 4 in a row, eventually losing the entire game. And that's why you have this completely uneven attacking and defensive win rate here.
Yeah, and that result was a little bit surprising because this is really regarded as one of the top T2 teams. I mean, they finished top 8 in Element 2 and gave Envy all they could handle in their quarterfinal matchup, losing it in the end 2-1 in terms of map count. But just taking a look at their opponents tonight, it's going to be TEMPR White, and, well, they've got some familiar names as well. They had a lot closer of a matchup in their first game when they played SBL in Oregon, losing it 7-8. We've got Floos, HUD, Drix, Hectic, and Schmink, and some of those names are going to be familiar, particularly Schmink, who was actually a sub for the Wanted Goons for a little while before joining this squad.
Yeah, we'll go into 2 specific players later on, but, one thing I do want to touch on really quick is, yet again, the defensive and attacking win rate. As you can see, they actually have a more favored win rate on the attack, and not only that, that was a more attacker-favored win rate on Oregon of all maps. And not only is, that map for them alone very attacker-sided, this whole entire tournament so far in the group stage has been pretty close, almost 50-50 for win rate over all games in all maps. So TEMPR coming out and not only winning in a 57% attacking rate, but on Oregon out of all maps is just, I would say, I'm very curious. I'm really excited to see what they can do with that going into this matchup.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this matchup is the fact that these two teams met twice in the first qualifier. They didn't play in the second one. Both these teams actually qualified through the second qualifier. And we'll take a look at our head-to-head. It's going to be Uves and Drix as we're looking at them. And you can see Drix really strong on the entry game, and he's really been one of the big factors for TEMPR that have really enabled them to win those attacks. Like we saw, they had a really strong attacking half, or at least attacking rounds in their overtime game, but Uve's been struggling a little bit.
Yeah, you have definitely been struggling a little bit. I would say more on the defensive rate. I think overall, that 2-4 entry just goes to show just, how not only him, but his entire team is struggling. One thing to actually touch on, through all the stats you can see, Drix is usually the favored one and by a lot. As you can see, even the KD 11-7 compared to 17 and 10, and then the cost 50-73. But if you go down, and this really shows how each player plays, not only the mid to late round, their survival rate are both pretty low. While this is average for a lot of teams and a lot of players, as it's been a very close percentage for both games, both are just their overall statistics for the survival rating, 30 and 33, is a lot closer, rather their entry being 5-0 compared to a 2-4.
Yeah, and I mentioned that both these teams had played before, and we're going to get into the map bans. They both played on Nighthaven in Qualifier 1, and it was Outlast to get the better of Temper both times. And just looking at the bans, I like that Oregon ban to start things off from Outlast. It's the most played map by Temper. They played it 8 times. They have a 5-3 record on it. We're going to start things off tonight with Clubhouse, like we mentioned, a map that Outlast struggled a little bit on when they played up against the X Osiris team. Like we said, the defenses are something that they really need to figure out tonight. Looking ahead to Border as well, it's a strong map for both teams, and I feel like Outlast are going to read into that really well.
Oh yeah, going into Clubhouse, if you're Temper, you're looking at the last game that Outlast played, losing that 7-3. It's definitely a map you want to take them on, especially if you're working off, recent bias. And then Border, both teams, favoring it. Temper winning it, having a win-loss percentage of 2-0, and then Outlast having a 2-1 record. So, not too different there. But one thing I do want to touch into is Nighthaven. While Clubhouse, I would say, Temper, they see something there. They think they can win that over Outlast. And then going into Border, it's a more of an even matchup. Nighthaven is not. It is not even whatsoever. Outlast have won Nighthaven 5 out of the 5 times. And out of those 5 matchups, going back to our qualifiers, they have beat Temper twice. While no, the rosters somewhat were a little bit different, still, I believe it was a 8-7 and 7-4. So, yeah, if I'm Temper and I don't get a 2-0, I'm going to be really worried going into that last map.
Yeah, especially because while it's not the exact same roster from those two results for Temper, the core is still the same. It was HUD, Drix, and Floops who were still on the team at the time before the two Temper rosters split up. Of course, it's worth noting that Temper has had a few roster changes recently, bringing in Schmink and Hectic, but still very strong roster as a whole. And
Oh, yeah.
like we mentioned, that X Dilemma team now on Outlast they've been together for a long time, so I feel like they have to be looking good. And one other thing worth noting before we get into the game is in Element 2, this Outlast roster started off 0-2 and then came storming back, winning 3 of their final Swiss games to make the playoffs. So they're no strangers to playing in elimination matches. So this is really going to favor them, I think.
Oh yeah, it definitely is going to favor them. Not only that, because they've also been together longer. While players on Temper, know each other, they played ranked to each other. This set roster we have right now has only been together, I believe, a week or two. So, obviously, at the end of the day, it just matters what you do in the lobby. It doesn't matter what you do previously. But just going into this, Outlast is just favored in almost every aspect to win. Especially if we get to that third map, I think it's going to be an Outlast win. But Temper, nonetheless, bringing us to the first map, Clubhouse, which Outlast just lost 7-3. They still have a really great chance to win here.
And worth noting, Outlast are going to start on the defense for Clubhouse, so we're going to need to see if they can right the wrongs of their first game and really start to bring things back. Show that that game was just a fluke. Like we said, no successful defenses for them when they played against Osiris, but they did have a really strong attack. Both these teams, like we mentioned, very strong on the attack overall, at least in their opening matches. And throughout the quals, I believe as well, both of them showcased how strong their attacks can be. But what are we thinking for bans? I know that we like to see a zombie on this map, and maybe we see a curveball on the attack, maybe a Brava ban coming out.
Yeah, honestly, I think the operator we can say that is going to get banned outright is Ying. She's been being banned in this tournament and season 71% so far. So she's basically been banned almost every game. It's honestly just with this meta, if you bring a Ying, she just helps you clear out utility, clear out space so much more efficiently. So banning her out is, I wouldn't say, a no-brainer, but it's definitely a really safe pick. Dokkaebi following suit, 43%. Going to defense, as you said before, a zombie also being banned out at 71%. Especially on Clubhouse, being able to create angles, especially on Raptors, for example, in Garage, just such a useful operator. I could see a Cade ban too, but I feel like we're kind of at the point where, especially with the Tubarão, we found like defensive strategies to work around it. But honestly, yeah, I could see a curveball coming out, especially since Tepper picked this map specifically to go against Outlast.
Yeah, and worth noting, when Outlast played this map, they banned Habana and Azami. So maybe we see that come out again from them as they're going to get the first ban. So we'll kind of see what they're thinking. But like you said, maybe some hard breach coming out here, maybe that Brava, but likely going to be a Ying, at least one of these two bans. But okay, a little bit of a curveball coming out. That Grim, such a strong operator when it comes to the execute. And especially on that basement side, really just the whole map in general. You can use those bees to force players out of positions that are deep in sight, especially if you want to leave that Azami on the board. It can make those Kiva barricades a little bit less of a hassle to deal with.
Yeah, also Grim is just an operator that just makes defenders very uncomfortable. And as you saw in the last map, Outlast was very uncomfortable on the defense, but Outlast banned Hibana last time, but it's actually TEMPR to be the team to ban out Hibana. If you're Outlast, you're thinking, okay, we don't have to ban Hibana. We can actually choose something, maybe our second pick or banned operator we wanted to ban. But TEMPR are going to be banning their last operator being a defender. I'm really curious to see where I could see it in a zombie, but we're actually be seeing a Tubarao. That is not a surprise whatsoever. Tubarao right now is just so good. He has been nerfed, so he's not as good, but still a very operator and meta-defining operator, especially on Clubhouse. Clubhouse is definitely one of his better maps.
Well, with that, it means that now that the Solus is gone, it's going to leave both Azami and Fenrir on the board. That's a really scary duo to have for this Clubhouse map because, well, from the games I saw yesterday, that Fenrir is so deadly when it comes to hanging on to crucial choke points such as blue, and even really you can use it in dirt as well to kind of give away the attack's positions. And speaking of the Azami, Rafters and Arsenal, those two spots that you're going to want to watch out for that operator on, is we're going to get into it. It's going to be the church defense to start things off. But surprisingly, no Azami. We are going to see that Fenrir, however, but a lot of information being brought out on the side of Outlast.
Yeah, a whole lot of information. I think that's a really big problem that Outlast not only has, on their defense, but in general is like when they're not given that information, whether they don't have strict intel, whether that be a ping or a call out, they have trouble. And going into this defense, I really like they chose defense first, not only because obviously it's the favored side, but they can directly attack their problems and fix it early on in the game, and instead of waiting going in the second half like they did before game or in the last match. And I think that was a problem, is that they didn't realize that they had a whole lot of problems because they were on their more favored side, and then when they went onto their less favored side, those problems just showed out even more. But also, I'm just really, I wouldn't say excited, but I'm really curious to just see how TEMPR really attacks this round. Really attacks, these roamers like Zonky on the Valkyrie roaming.
Yeah, just looking at it for the moment, Outlast putting a lot of emphasis on this top floor room. You can see Vipoa just sitting upstairs, I believe inside of Cash, potentially trying to take an engagement. And TEMPR are going to read into this. They're going to dedicate a lot of their forces, including this Ying that we see, to trying to clear them out and make their site execute a little bit easier. That Ying is actually going to be so deadly because of the fact that she's been allowed to stand up. It's going to be a lot more potent of an operator, I think, than the Grim might have been. But still, both teams have their ways. Both teams have the way that they want to go ahead and attack. And just about a minute in so far, not too much coming in, but you have seen TEMPR start to work their way in. They have an opening onto the top floor.
Yeah, they have an opening, and not only do they have an opening, but because that hatch was open, Zonky was able to drop below. But the thing here is that not only is he falling back, supporting his Legion, making sure he gets back down, they've wasted around half of the time, but you still have Vipoa on the roam, on stairs, and it doesn't look like they have droned him out. Surely they've heard him now, but it's actually Yub to get the first pick. That is really good. That is Floof's gone. That is now your hard breach operator gone. And sure, you have those pocket can openers, but it's going to be even more difficult to really get that church wall open from main stairs, because now you're going to have to directly go up onto it. And not only that, but Vipoa has still not only been droned out, but it doesn't look like they have any clue that he's still here.
Well, they may not have a clue that he's here, but they sure are dedicating a lot of time and a lot of manpower to making sure that they're thorough with their top floor clear. You can see both Drix and Schmitty working their way into the top floor. And one thing I wanted to point out was the fact that losing that opening pick means that TEMPR are going to have to focus their attack more on a hatch drop rather than potentially going for the main church wall, because of the fact that you can't throw those summons from long range. The good news for them is they still have plenty of options for their attack, because of the fact that, like I said, you can get all the hatches open, you still have a lot of angles to work with. Drix is finally going to find Vipoa on the top floor, so while they may not have had an idea initially that he was there, they are going to finally shut him down. The bad news for them is that they only have 40 seconds, and they haven't really done much with their off destruction. You can see them finally getting the breach charges, finally getting that Buck into position to try and break up some of this kitchen flooring. They don't have a lot of time to work with this. The Toxic Babes are going to eat up much of the time that's left if the attack tries to go for a kitchen drop in. But a lot of the focus is going to be put on Moto. Yub finds another one in this round. It's going to be the Thatcher off the board. And, well, HUD's going to potentially try to drop in a blue. Drix going and the drop's gonna come in simultaneously and trade back into a 3 versus 3. Just 10 seconds left. Still nobody in the sight for Temper, but the bodies are falling as well. Just now 5 seconds, and it's gonna be traded back. Hectic needs to get inside of the site, needs to get the plant down, and it's gonna be Outlast to shut things down as a TK from HUD finishes off Hectic, and a disastrous execute from Temper when it seemed like they might have had something going their way is gonna give Outlast the first round.
Wow, that was just really unlucky. But, props to Outlast, in that initial first half of the round, having those two roamers, having Zonky paired with the Legion. Not only did they shoot a lot of intel, but they wasted a lot of time for their teammate Vipoa on that Mozzie to roam upstairs. And because Temper didn't deal with those initial two roamers in the first half, they wasted even more time and then didn't get rid of Vipoa on that Mozzie upstairs in initiation until around 40 seconds left, and that just made it really difficult for the late round because you wasted so much time. But Outlast still having a little bit problem in that late half, especially the thing we saw in their last Clubhouse game they played just in the group stage a couple days ago, was they were really just giving isolated 1v1s in that late round to the attackers. But because they wasted so much time, got that initial first pick, it did have favored, and they were in favored in that late half.
Yeah, just looking ahead to this second round, we're going to be heading up to Gym. And, well, that Mira being left on the board for this map is going to mean that you're likely going to see a lot of emphasis being put for Outlast on holding on to the Logi area and, well, Bathroom as well. But for the moment, we're going to see a heavy cache and CCTV extension. A lot of forces being dedicated over to that area, as well as a couple frost mats to try and make it a little bit harder for Temper to work their way in. And well, you saw underneath both the bedroom and the gym windows are frost mats ready and waiting to greet Temper if they decide to go for a highway execute later in the round. A little bit of a surprise factor coming in, and well, that Fenrir as well. Going to be so deadly when it comes to potentially trying to work Temper in through some choke points like construction. And well, Temper going to need to do a very good job in their drone game to try and figure out where a lot of this utility is located, or they could be walking into a trap.
That Dokkaebi also, well, not coming out anymore, the Flores rather, still can get a whole lot of not only intel, but also clear a lot of utility, also potentially clear Mira out of her position here, so they're able to, maybe send a player onto that window to shoot one of those mirrors out. The Mira directly on Jacuzzi wall, that's really interesting. Not going to work a whole lot. Yeah, they're surely going to get that wall open, but actually, no, when they opened it, it actually enabled them to impact trip the wall, so that overall strat they had worked perfectly, and Outlast yet again wasting time not on the roam, but actually the breach denial this time around.
Well, you saw HUD work his way up onto that construction balcony, and he's going to be able to get that construction breach opened up and provide a bit of a cutoff for the Temper when Outlast tries to rotate back to the side. You can see Zonky still doing a heavy extension, trying to challenge and contest some of this map control. We're just about half the round in, and this is about the time where you expect Outlast to start falling back. But like I said, it's going to be a lot harder for them to do so because of the fact that Temper have players in a perfect cutoff. So it seems like Outlast might just decide to leave Zonky all alone and potentially see if he can find a pick. And there you go. There's the opener for Outlast. A beautiful play by Zonky, and he's going to be allowed to get away with his life, but finally traded out down to a 4 versus 4, and now Temper have that map control.
Yeah, Zonky was pushed out, but yet again, Floofs on that ace is now your first pick and gone. That hard breach utility that you can throw over distance is now going to be gone. And yet again, just like the first round, the only hard breach utility you have to directly place on the wall and risk your body. And with 50 seconds left, you don't have a whole lot of utility, and because of that, Hectic jumps right, or rather walks right into a frost mat, and that just wastes even more time. And now he's so low and so slow, it's going to make his job even more difficult. That Flores drone is going to take out some of that Azami utility, but while they're taking out a lot of utility, they don't have a whole lot of drone intel on these last couple of defenders.
Yeah, just 2 drones left for Temper to work with for this final 25 seconds or so. They don't even really have an established way into the building. They have that construction control, but they don't have any control for Logi, and there's still a player, actually 2 players trying to contest it. It's going to go terribly for them. It's going to be Yuve to swing for 2. How about a third for Yuve? And it's going to be Rai to shut it down as Outlast hang on to the site once again. Temper seemingly falling apart in the final minute. Well, that frost came in so clutch like we mentioned at the start. Outlast looking much better in their second game.
In that early round, while there wasn't a huge roam presence, there was a lot of off-site utility used by Outlast, and because of that, Temper was forced to burn their floors, burn their flashes and other utility early on, and because of that, not only did when you got in the late round are you down an operator, but you didn't have that drone, you didn't have that Flores to clear that utility, clear the zombies in master, clear out and drone out that frost, for example, and in that last minute to 40 seconds, you're kind of struggling not only to push sight, but actually set up your attacking execute. And because of that, Outlast kind of just had to sit back in sight and wait for TEMPR to swing their crossfires.
Well, looking at this CCTV defense, we're going to have that Azami paired with the Wamai. It's such a deadly combination when allowed to sit up on the Raptors position. And I like to think that TEMPR might bring out something like a Kappa Tower, maybe even a Montang to try and deal with it, but they're not going to, instead favoring that Maverick combination. And that indicates potentially that TEMPR might decide to go for a bit more of a focus on construction. However, if Outlast play their cards right, it can be such a crucial position if they don't clear it out on the side of TEMPR, hanging on to those Raptor spots, because, like so many of you probably know, if you hang on to Raptors, you can hold such a long crossfire on the cache door to construction, and it can really be a quick shutdown if TEMPR are not careful.
Outlast bringing out this Mira strat yet again, but actually the counter that TEMPR is bringing out with HUD, that Maverick, when it tried to open that wall, while it is slow, it is a direct counter, and you don't really have to worry about your wall being impact trick, because you can't really impact trick Maverick. But yet another thing, as you were talking about before, you have the not highway but Raptors, and honestly the only person on the side of TEMPR who can clear out those zombie charges is that Zofia. You don't have that Flores being brought out again. You don't have any nades. You have a set of 9 flashes, and while nades aren't as useful to kill operators, they're still very useful to get rid of utility. And for right now with the zombie, until she is changed, the only way you can get rid of her charges are with explosives.
Yeah, those Kiva barricades, such a nightmare to try and deal with. But what's even more of a nightmare to try and deal with is the fact that while TEMPR might be focusing their attack on this bedroom side, Outlast have dedicated a lot of utility and a lot of their manpower to that side of the map as well. It's going to be the first pick going the way of TEMPR, but you saw potentially the fact that there is that mirror window sitting in position, but I believe that was Yuv who was actually sitting inside a bathroom, now cleared out by the Buck. So a lot of that roam presence and a lot of the controls given away now. There is actually one player still just situated on the roam, but I don't believe that Drix has any idea about him, and he does not. He's going to be felled by Rai. That's going to trade things back to a 4 versus 4.
Wow, and Rai is just allowed to run out that little wall there covering his crossfire that a player on Flus was holding outside. That single wall on cache is going to be open, so Flus doesn't have to worry about opening it, but he does have to worry about these crossfire, and because TEMPR wasted so much time and utility in the late half, TEMPR yet again doesn't have any intel, doesn't have any lines of sight, any drones on any of these last players, and because of that, they just have to dry swing these crossfires that are being held by Outlast. And honestly, Outlast is just really forcing TEMPR to play their game right now.
And the funny thing about that is the fact that TEMPR still have 6 drones on the board. They were dry swinging, like you said, and they didn't have any information, but they could have, though. They had the Dokkaebi, they had all of those drones still available, so I'm curious as to what the decision-making was behind that. I mean, they had that opening pick, they had a lot of map control to work with, but when they didn't drone out Yuv inside of the Logi area, it ended up costing them a lot of that control and ended up costing them a lot of their manpower as well. So we're going to get a timeout from TEMPR here, give themselves a chance to try and figure out what's going wrong and see if they can figure out how to best pick up some rounds here, because we've seen it a lot, at least through the group stage so far. This map kind of tends to be 50-50.
It does, tend to be 50-50. Not for Outlast, though, but Outlast, even if they lose these next 3 rounds, they have gotten more defensive round wins than their last game on this mapping group stage. So if I'm Outlast right now, I'm feeling good. But if I'm TEMPR right now, I'm not feeling too great, because sure, you're losing, but it's not because Outlast is outplaying you. It's just because, while sure, the first round, it was, in my opinion, just Outlast outplaying, but these last 2 rounds, we've just seen TEMPR just play really slow. And when they have to deal with these, first round executes, with the roamers, with the out of sight extensions, they deal with it so slow, and it just really feels like they're not getting all of their basics down. It doesn't really feel like all of their players are in the right game sense. They're not playing together as a team right now. And because of that, you're down 0-3 in the first half, and you kind of are forced to take your timeout because you don't it doesn't feel like all the players are on the same page.
Yeah, and we talked about in the head-to-head matchup before the game started, Drix versus Yuv, and on the last round, it was Drix to get the better of you in that opening engagement on the Buck, but it didn't end up working out too well because of the fact that Drix wasn't able to survive for much longer than that and have much more impact on the round. Because of the fact that he was that Buck, you would have liked to see him potentially work his way below and try to force players out on that green box position, which really was the fact that ended up shutting down their attack. They didn't have information on the fact that while the construction wall was open, they didn't know that there was a player ready on green box to stop the vault in from the construction window, which really was the deciding factor of that round, other than the fact that they didn't drone out the roamers. But looking back to the second attempt for Outlast on the basement site, we're going to have a lot of information on the border and information denial as well. You've got that mutant Valkyrie combo, as well as the Fenrir to try and gain a lot of information as to what it is that TEMPR is going to want to do. And it seems, at least for the moment, maybe not as much roam presence like we saw in round number one, but still likely going to see at least a little.
Yeah, still have some roam presence, but one good thing in the favor of TEMPR right now is, aside from Yuv with those 2 impacts, Outlast doesn't necessarily have a lot of utility to deny TEMPR from getting those hatches open, and rather TEMPR actually not only has both a Thermite and Ace, but also Buck with 2 of those can openers. So if they're able to, clear out this roam, even if they don't get a pick and they go hit the site in a 5v5, they surely will be able to open up these hatches relatively easily and quickly.
Yeah, just only one player on the top floor for the side of Outlast. It's going to be Yuv, who's had a really nice game to this point. He's been doing really well finding kills in the late round. We saw him swing onto Logi in round number 2, and he's going to be that main point of ingress for the side of Outlast. TEMPR are actually going to do a really good job. It's going to be the opening engagement going the way of Drix, and a beautiful clear out of the top floor. Just a minute burn, so a lot of good time management being used here by TEMPR. They need to start converting this down to the first floor, however, because of the fact you need to do a lot better of using the Buck to try and get that floor, that vertical pressure onto the site.
And as I spoke of before, Yuv being the only player on the side of Outlast that was going to be able to deny those hatches, aside from maybe killing the player with that C4. But now, yet again, TEMPR has to deal with the problem of clearing out the roam. And oh no, it looks like Yuv, or not Yuv, but Vipo originally was undroned. Now he will be droned, but with a minute 18 left, they have to choose if they either want to ignore this player or address and take him out immediately. Right now, if I'm Vipo, I'm just here to waste time. I'm not going to try to, rotate back to side. I'm going to play my life, try to waste time, and maybe even take a player with me, but he's not going to take anybody. It's hectic to clear him out yet again. And for the first time, with a minute left, TEMPR have a 2-man advantage.
Well, I was going to mention that TEMPR, since getting that opening pick, had spent about a minute just running around on the top floor and hadn't done much. But a lot of that time being wasted is made up for the fact that you did find that roamer and finish off by Poa, who's had a little bit of a rough game to start. We'll see if he can pick it up in the later portions of this game. And it's going to be up to the final 3 members to try and hold on to the site. They are going to start throwing out their C4s, and with the last one going out, that's not going to leave much for Outlast to try and deny any potential plants. And with this church wall being opened up, it's going to give TEMPR a very easy access point into the site. They might not have the read on the player swinging in. No, they don't. It's going to be the Brat just working his way in. It's going to be Austin, formerly known as Burnt Turkey, working his way in, finding a pick back. Just 15 seconds left now, and Austin trying to find another one, but he's going to be shut down on the main stairs. It's all falling apart for Outlast from the dying seconds, but they need to get this plant, and TEMPR needs to work their way in. Zonky left alone inside of blue as the timer's expiring. He's got 3 members to find, and that plant's going to go down. It's going to leave him in a very precarious spot, whipping all of his shots. That SMG-33 not doing him any favors. The Warden now just on such low HP. They have the perfect read on where he's at. They just need to hold their angles. Just sit back, bait him in. Hectic going for the swing with the pistol. He's going to get finished off, paying a little bit for his potential war crime. Another ping on the player at the bottom of main stairs. But he's going to walk right into the crossfire of Drix, who's from above is able to shut him down. And TEMPR are finally on the board.
Dick, I love that. But that round, not only did Drix, but TEMPR had a lot easier of a time in those initial entry gunfights and just overall roam clear. And they did all that building off of their timeout they had just before, and they got a round. That's honestly all you need from a timeout, is just to get one round. That is all you need, and that's what we saw. Not only did they get the first entry, but they also got the second entry. And honestly, if I'm looking at Outlast right now, this is the first round so far in the series that they've looked stumped. Those first 3 rounds, they put all the cards, I wouldn't say all of them, but in the first half, all the cards on that roam, and it worked out in their favor. But the first round, we didn't see that roam game work out for them. They lost the round. So if I'm looking at Outlast right now, I really want them to adapt. You know, you can still rely on that roam game, but you have to have both the players and the utility on site to back that up if that roam game doesn't work out for you.
A little bit of a different lineup being brought here for the second attempt at Jim for Outlast. You got the first time, I believe, the Azami and the Fenrir combo, two of the stronger defenders in the meta right now, just because of the fact that you can use it to not only cut off, but create new angles in all areas of the map. And I've got a feeling that we're going to see a lot of focus being put on that cache and CCTV side once again. One of those Goyo canisters is going to get popped early on in the
Like
prep phase, and it's going to, yeah, punished by Poa. Going to eat about half of his HP, so that's going to be a huge advantage for TEMPR when they try to go and take an engagement with the mirror. Likely going to be playing inside a gym, but we'll just have to see.
Yeah, it's just really unlucky. And, you know, we're seeing from Outlast, they're bringing out, you know, they're trying to answer back from last round. You know, they're bringing out Zonky with the Goya, with the fire. We're also seeing that Fenrir come out yet again. Both of these operators, on top of that with the Legion, are just operators just going to use their raw utility, their raw, you know, overall, you know, powers to just try to waste time. You're not going to be able to, you know, not only waste time with, you know, your player bodies, with your guns and lines of sight, but it doesn't matter because Rai actually falls down first to Hectic. That's a really good first pick. That is a zombie now. And if you're not sure how a zombie works, you know, over time her actual charges will, you know, regain and recharge. So her utility that was going to charge over the time of the game is now unable to be used.
Yeah, not only that, but remember they do have that limited HP available to by Poa, so Outlast significantly on the back foot here as we're just a minute in. You've got Drix working his way in from below to try and provide some cutoffs on the player inside of Cash and potentially finish him off as he tries to rotate back as the round progresses. But you've got players who are working their way into Garage. It's going to be the finish off from inside of CCTV. Zonky is finally able to find the equalizer, looking to swing onto the CCTV breach and hits a couple of shots onto Blues, gets it down, but he's not going to get the confirm. He's going to be shut down finally by the second player. I believe that was HUD out there on the balcony to try and finish him off, and now TEMPR regain their man advantage. They're going to have the opportunity to pick the ace back up, and still a lot of utility in their pocket. Not necessarily a lot of execute utility, but they still have some soft destruction. They have a lot of hard destruction left. They still got 2 cannon openers, and they've got one of those Soma charges to use to try to help them with their execute.
TEMPR doing really good, and yet again, I'm looking at Outlast to see if they can use their utility. They only have 1 impact and C4 left. Sure, Vipoa is still low in health, but it's only a 3v4, and you have the whole entire control of sight. No one is doing vertical right now, and they don't have a whole lot of utility right now. So if I'm Outlast, I'm in not the most comfortable, but still a very comfortable situation, a very comfortable spot. As we can see, Drix is just kind of waiting to hear somebody, maybe waiting for a teammate to call that they're trying to rotate, as we're now seeing Floose bringing out the drones, going to actually drone out Yuv, but Drix not in a position to punch them, so Outlast is just giving this breathing room because TEMPR is just really looking for Outlast to make the first move.
Yeah, and with those 2 players inside of Lodge, it's going to leave it a lot more limited to the hold on the site, but you have Austin finally working his way back in. Just 20 seconds left. TEMPR have not done much. They're just situated outside of the building. Those Goyo canisters are going to start burning away at their time and burning away at their options. You've got so many players on low HP on their side. Where is the execute? What are we doing? There's 8 seconds left of the round. I'm just sitting outside of windows. TEMPR, you have to go. How do you have to get inside of the building? You have to get this diffuser down. They're just going to win on time. A trade comes in as Austin's able to find that one, and it's suddenly Outlast with the advantage with the diffuser down, and no, Yuv is going to shut him down. TEMPR absolutely fumble the bag in the late round, and they have to plant with no time left. What in the world?
TEMPR, you know, in that first half, just like the round before, their early round was really good. Even though they didn't get those first 2 picks, their first entry kill was eventually refragged. They still got yet another pick, and going into the actual site execute, they had that control on Cash and Garage side, but the thing is, it just doesn't look like they droned. I'm not sure what their drone economy looked like. I wasn't looking at their drone economy, but at the time, and because they didn't have a player on the back hold, on main stairs, or doing vertical down below, they were forced to just sit on windows, sit on hatch, and just wait for Outlast to overswing and overpeak and really start the aggression. But Outlast realized that not only did they have a very comfortable position in a 3v4, but they also had that 4th man, that timer ticking down, and because of that, they kind of just understood that they didn't need to overswing, they didn't need to be over aggressive, and TEMPR just wasted their own time because they didn't have any intel and they weren't sure not only what they wanted to do, but how they wanted to approach that last 40 to 30 seconds.
Well, we saw the Goyo canisters just burning away at all the different entranceways, so I feel like that might have had something to do with it because, like I mentioned, a lot of the Temper players were on low HP. But I'm just confused as the fact that they had no sense of urgency in that round. I mean, are they not playing with sound? I'm stunned at what's going on.
Honestly, it's just these really just, I wouldn't say basic, but you're just not droning. You're not putting your teammates, you're not putting your entry players that are first to push into site in a position, and because of that, they're not able to push into site and get these opening kills, and Temper is just left wondering what they want to do. As you saw, they just had, Drix sitting on hatch, 2 players sitting on windows, just waiting, and then it was 19 seconds, then 15, and then eventually when it fell down to only 9 seconds left, Temper was just forced to start swinging and hoping they won it, and they almost got that plant down because it wasn't being realized initially, but it just wasn't enough. And if I'm Temper, if I want to get a 4-2 half right now, which is what you want, sure, you're going to go on defense, but you do not want to go down 5-1. You need to just not only deal with this early game, which they, haven't had a problem with these last couple rounds, but you really need to use your drones and set up the actual push instead of just waiting for Outlast to do the job for you.
I mean, they've got that Dokkaebi as well. It's still 7 drones on the board, and they've done a good job of droning out and forcing players down from the top floor. But you've still got Zonky just situated inside of Stock, who you might have to worry about later on in the round. I don't know if he's given away his position quite yet, but I don't believe that Temper are aware of his position. As you see, Drix is just working his way down to blue, potentially bypassing that, and, well, Zonky's actually going to go ahead and work his way back down to the site. So, at least for the moment, 4 players from Outlast have made their way back. Not sure if the 5th has as well, so Temper gonna have plenty of time to start working their way in towards the kitchen area and start getting the buck, as well as the other soft destruction that they have on Hectic and even Flukes, really. Gonna try and make it a little bit harder for Outlast to play safely in this site. Specifically, Arsenal, I mean, you can see them starting to open the hatches as well. So actually a really good early round once again. The question is, can they convert it into the late round?
For the first time in this series, on this map, on this site of Basement, it looks like Temper, with around, when we get to that 45 to 30 second mark, they're going to start hitting the site with a 5v5 man count, and that one single wall being reinforced there is really strong. It may look like, just a simple wall being reinforced. That's going to enable Outlast to deny the quick rush run-in into site from main stairs from Temper, so Temper is going to have to look to get these hatches, and it honestly looks like we just might see a 5v5 hot draw.
Well, for the moment, the execute seems to be focused on the main stairs. You can see 4 players within arm's reach of that area, and you can see HUD potentially working his way. And indeed, he's going to go for the Moto drop, and as the church wall is going to get opened up, it's going to make it a lot harder for the players inside of church to play in this position, but thankfully, they've got the cover from blue. We're going to go out, not going to find anything. 10 seconds once again. Temper in the exact same situation. 10 seconds left. There's no sense of urgency. They're walking into the breach and falling apart, but they win their gunfights. It's now them in a favorable advantage. And now just 2 players left for Outlast as time expires. Juve's going to fall. It's going to be all up to Zonky to try and clutch out a 1 versus 2 once again. Now, the timer working against him. He has the read on the players situated outside of the church wall. He doesn't necessarily know where specifically he's at, but both these Temper players are going to be right next to each other. They're going to have the perfect read and the perfect cross if one of them falls to get that refrag. And HUD actually has information on the fact that Zonky's working his way down this main hallway, but it's going to be Schmitty to shut him down. And Temper finally get their second attacking round and secure a 4-2 half. A much better late round execute from them, despite the fact that it seemed like once again they might stall out.
Yeah, going into that late round, we came down to that last 10 seconds for Temper, and Outlast doing the exact same thing they did beforehand, just playing back, playing really passive. But that round, that time again, that passability that Outlast was bringing out actually punished them. As you can see, Outlast just sitting back, that actually enabled Temper to get a kill and actually take positions on that church wall, and they were enabled to get that plant down and secure themselves a 3v2, which eventually fell into a 1v2 situation. Outlast just, I would say reading the situation a little bit bad, and because of that, Temper was giving that small smidget of an opportunity that they most definitely took.
Well, this round is pretty much the exact same of what we saw a lot from Outlast on their half. You see that Warden being brought out once again, as well as a plethora of information available to them in both the form of the Mira and the Valkyrie. A lot of information just in different types. You've got those cameras you could place around the map, and the mirror windows, of course, are likely going to see them placed in positions. Blue, you could see one just off to the left side of your screen. Going to be able to deny a push in if the or if the blue or the oil drop comes in. But for the side of Outlast, they've got the IQ to perfectly deal with an operator such as the Valkyrie, and even really the Warden can help out with that as well.
I'm actually really curious on why Rai is bringing this Maverick. Sure, he's going to be able to get hatches, but, that's you relying that your early round is going to be quick because, while, that, it's not that slow, it still is a lot slower than, just putting a hard breach. And with that tuber out being banned out, you don't have to actually worry about him losing the hatches. So I'm just, kind of curious on what they're going to do here. Poa actually bringing out a Ram this time around, a completely, different operating line. IQ also being brought out to counter that Valkyrie. I really like just how Outlast is adapting to what TEMPR is bringing out to them so far.
Well, about a minute in, and for the moment, it seems like everybody on the side of TEMPR is falling back to the site. A lot of control given up very early on, and it's going to give Outlast a lot of freedom to try and work their way in and find some of this space, find some of this vertical control that they so desperately need. They've got a lot of utility to work that with as well. They've got not only the breaching charges in Austin's pocket, they've got the Ram as well. Just one of those charges left for him, but still plenty to work with. Those boogie charges can do a lot of damage to the flooring, especially if it's a wide open one such as Kitchen. Still just about a half the round to go, and we haven't really seen Outlast use much of their hard breach yet. They seem to be not aware of the fact that they have this full control, and a lot of their players are just situated over towards blue. They need to start rotating towards the kitchen area if that's where they plan to do their execute.
And they also, again, they don't have a whole lot of hard breach utility. All they have as, straight hard breach is that Ace, preferably you would want to use that on, maybe a Mira or a church wall so you can try to get the plant there. So for hatches, it's going to be mostly up to Rai because if you're Ace, you can only really get one hatch. So if you have the Rai to get those hatches, and it doesn't look like they've had a problem. They're going to be bringing Ace on the side of Austin down to get that wall. He's going to get it pretty much openly. Actually, they may have impact tricked it. I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, Wamai standing right there ready to impact trick it. It looks like they do get some of it open. Only going to get feet holes, so they're not going to be able to run and plant there. And with 30 seconds left, Outlast is in a really uncomfortable position right now.
That Warden's going to be so deadly, even though he's flashed out. Well, he's only going to be good for one, but the teams trade down to a 3 versus 3, still favoring the defense because of the fact that the time is running so very low. And HUD's still got a couple of those Wamai magnets to try and throw out. He doesn't have much to worry about because Outlast are absolutely starved for utility. They have nothing to help them with the execute, but it's going to work anyways. They're just going to run in and get 2 kills. It's all up to Schmitty now in the 1 versus 3, and well, he doesn't even have a C4 to try and stop this plant from going down. He's working his way into church. He spots the planter, but no, it's going to be you to shut him down. And Outlast are going to win their first attack. A beautiful church execute in the low time, almost identically to what we saw from TEMPR.
Honestly, that almost could have been a TEMPR round if that last player just shot a little bit more to the right onto that player. But nonetheless, Outlast just completely catching TEMPR off guard in that last, couple 15 seconds. I really love just the togetherness that you saw from Outlast, and it just really goes to show that, not only in that last 15 seconds when they started to flood site in a 3v3, but just that overall late site execute, they all were playing really together. They're all on the same page, and it just goes to show that, Outlast isn't that team that's just going to have, that 1 or 2 fraggers, maybe like a team like OXG with Newers. They all play together. All of them can somewhat shoot, aside from Vipoa, having somewhat of a more rough game, but still going to be able to get that vertical utility, get that intel utility. Now, TEMPR have lost their very first defensive round and are now 3 rounds down. Outlast only being 1 round from going on match point. And I'm TEMPR right now. This is not what you expected to go into in this map.
I hate to say it, but at this point, we're kind of just playing a 4 versus 4, and that's really advantageous to the side of Outlast because Blues having the game that he's having, being 0-7, is one of the main fraggers for TEMPR, at least when I've had the chance to watch him. He's really been kind of that impact player for this roster, and when he's asleep at the wheel like he is right now, it's going to leave a lot more pressure on the side of this TEMPR team. And well, right now, they seem to be struggling a little bit to make up for that. I mean, you've got players like Drix and Hectic who are doing okay, but just overall not finding the kills when it matters most, especially because of the fact that in the early round, they haven't really had much success. You saw last round, it was a 5 versus 5 execute in the late round, and a lot of that came down to the fact that TEMPR didn't really try to challenge the upper portions of the map, but working their way in now, just 40 seconds. And what seems once again, TEMPR going to do the exact same thing and try to force their players on the site.
Yeah, TEMPR just really trying to force all these players. The last round, it just didn't work because OUTLAST, they welcome this. They welcome that 5v5 execute. They welcome, not only losing those early picks initially, and with about a minute 50, I would say even more than, half the round. All of the roamers have now been cleared out, flushed down below, and yet again, this gives OUTLAST all the time they need to not only set up their positions, set up their vertical play, but also get drones in on the site, get utility and intel on where these players are playing. Rai yet again, I really like that he's able to just, get these hatches because I would say it's a lot quieter. It's a lot more unexpected because, you just have so many angles you have to worry about. And just Outlast giving TEMPR so many variations, giving them so many aspects of this overall attack to worry about. And it's because TEMPR has given them so much time to just set up this execute.
Yeah, once again, you can see Outlast making sure they have all of the options available for them when it comes down to the late round. I don't know if they're going to put a lot of emphasis on Kitchen once again. We didn't really see that from the last round. Instead, decided to go straight for the church wall, but they've got those impacts once again from HUD. While that Goyo can delay a lot of time with fire, he can also delay a lot of time by denying the hard breach, and he's going to do that once again. Both impacts now burned out, and well, it's going to leave Austin with one Selma left, and he's actually going to be able to use it to try and actually open up a way for them into the site through that church wall. There's 40 seconds left now, and once again, it's a 5 versus 5. Feels like the exact same round that we just watched. HUD's going to be the perfect operator to try and deny this, but the grenade's going to start flying in. Probably not going to find much in terms of damage, but it seems like Outlast are going to drop into blue, and what's going to favor them is they're going to actually get control of it because of the fact that Rai is there to support, but the trades are coming in. TEMPR is heavily in the favor, and it's going to be Floops to swing for 2. The M590 at such close range is an absolutely deadly beast to try and conquer. And well, he's going to win it inside of Moto. TEMPR come back and win their second attempt on Church.
Outlast feeling a little too safe. And honestly, I wouldn't say it was the exact same push they did the round before, but it was a very similar one. And because of that, you basically gave TEMPR a whole round to adapt and change how they played against that. And willingly, they won it because they basically understood, okay, well, we know what we did. We know the problems we had on the last execute they had. Oh, they're just doing the same thing? Okay, we know what to do now. And because Outlast didn't change too much up, because they just, try to do the same thing because they thought they were going to be able to, TEMPR was in the perfect position to just counter everything because they somewhat had an idea or general idea of what they're going to do that whole round. And we're seeing, somewhat of the same play, but this time, Austin bringing out that Thermite. Definitely, you want to have a second, hard breach operator to support your team. But also, yet again, we're seeing, even though that Vipoa isn't on the actual scoreboard, he's going to still be able to give that drone utility, drone intel, and also waste and destroy the utility of TEMPR with that Flores drone. Flores is just a very useful operator, especially for this site, as we're seeing the zombie being brought out. This site right now, compared to other sites, you just really need to just clear that utility because it's a very one-dimensional. There's not a lot of ways you can push, especially if TEMPR is allowed, or rather able, to deny Jacuzzi wall closed.
Yeah, and just looking at the overall setup from TEMPR, you've got a lot of emphasis being put, as you would expect, on the CCTV cache side. You've got a lot of utility, not just in the form of the operators, but you've also got a couple frost mats dedicated over to that area as well to try and provide a little bit of surprise in the early portions of the round. To Outlast, they might not be careful, they might not be checking their feet, especially if they drone it out and determine that there's not operators there. They might be a little bit lax, and it might end up losing them a lot of their HP, or maybe get a kill if there's a player nearby to try and finish him off. But they're going to start doing a little bit of work with their hard destruction. Outlast's going to start working their way, and I believe that was the destruction breach they just opened up. So it's going to provide a cutoff on the roamers over on the cache and CCTV side, and put a little bit of fandom pressure, if nothing else, and maybe make TEMPR think twice before they decide to rotate back.
Yeah, but the thing is, while there is phantom pressure for the side of Outlast against TEMPR, TEMPR not only has pressure, but it's not exactly phantom, but it doesn't matter because HUD just runs out and is allowed to take out Yuv. That is a really big first pick. And not only that, but they also have Schmitty downstairs still roaming, and while Outlast is trying to clear the utility, they're not aware of this player down below. But we do have Zonky holding the crossfire, hoping that he can rotate up, but right now it doesn't look like that's exactly what he's planning to do.
There's no way Drix was allowed to survive for that long inside of CCTV. He found another kill and was able to take out Ying. That's your main execute operator off the board for the side of Outlast, so that's really a crucial loss. And another one from HUD, who's just situated inside of Jimmy's going to shut down Austin. And now these teams just continuing to trade back and forth. Vipoa just situated outside of Highway. He's going to find another one, and with 55 seconds left, limited drones are going to be available to Outlast to try and figure out where these last two defenders are. C4 is going to go out, not going to find anything there, and Zonky's going to read Smitty like a book. It's all up to Hectic now. Inside of Lodge, he's got a player working inside of the bedroom to try and deal with. He's going to spot the feet, but not going to find the kill. He's going to be lit up in the process as well. Trying to swing with the fences, a long-range shot, not going to work out well for the SMG-11. The plant's going to go down as well. Potentially going for the swing, and Vipoa reads him once again. It's going to be Outlast to put themselves on a match point. And what we talked about it in the pre-show, this is their strongest site to try and attack, and it proves itself there.
Yeah, proving themselves nonetheless, and now TEMPR, they have to win 3 rounds in a row. Not only that, actually not to win the first map, but actually just to send themselves into overtime. And Outlast, in that situation, even though they were losing the initial engagements on the entry, not only that, they were having somewhat trouble, getting walls open, getting that map control. When they were in that 5v3, 4v3, they turned it into a 3v3 because while they were down players, the remaining players were still in very good positions to trade themselves. They didn't, think to themselves, okay, well, we just lost 2 players. Let's just start, engaging in solo engagements and hoping we can get that man count. They actually prepared, played together as a team, even with 3 players left, and they just started to play the trades there and picks there, and they were lucky enough to actually not even lose a player and get it down to a 3v3. And that just goes to show not only, how together and just, how on the same page Outlast is, but just how they're always calm. They don't overthink, they don't, get over aggressive because they need to or they have to. They're not trying to compensate for losing players. They still continue to play the same idea of Siege that they do in the first round, in the first half of this map.
Well, I fear for TEMPR's chances, at least in this map, because of the fact that we're back on Gym. And like I mentioned, this is Outlast's strongest attack, at least statistically, from the first game of the Spring Burst. And, well, it's going to be a similar start to the last round, as we've got players such as Austin working his way in to try and open up on that CC breach and provide Outlast with a way into the site. You've got that Ying on the board once again. Didn't get to see much of it last time because of the fact that Rai was felled pretty early, but I want to see how they decide to use it, potentially try and clear out these roamers such as HUD, or maybe they try and save it for the execute and really use that to try and put the dagger in the hearts of TEMPR.
I really like Hectic bringing that mute out. That's not only going to deny a lot of intel and time towards Outlast, but also it's going to deny those Flores drones, which is going to make it not only, I wouldn't say impossible, but a lot harder to clear that utility. And yet again, we're seeing Schmitty roam downstairs. Oh, he just misses the shots, doesn't have the trigger discipline. And because of that, surely Outlast is aware where his position is, but not only that, but that there is a player on the side of Schmitty roaming, but they still have to deal with clearing this utility and clearing these players off of cash side.
Well, Outlast haven't really done much in that department so far. You can still see at least 2 players situated on that side of the map, and don't really have much to try and clear them out because of the fact that Vipoa is really limited on his Flores utility. He's only got 1 of those drones left to try and clear out that shield. Not sure if he actually got it there with the 3rd one. But nonetheless, it's going to leave them a little bit starved for time because of the fact that they don't really have an ingress into the building yet. You can see a lot of their players just still situated outside. And while you've still got that Valkyrie out on the roam to try and deal with as well, it seems like it might just be an execute into the site as Vipoa teased the fact that he might jump in, but it's going to be Schmitty to find the opening pick. That Valkyrie proving so deadly out on the roam, and they weren't able to drone him out. And another one's going to fall as Austin is going to be down. This attack is falling apart. Finally, something going back the way of Outlast's way, and well, it's going to allow the fact that now TEMPR have the advantage to try and get all of their players back to the site. There's a player working his way up the red stairs. Not sure if he has the raid on the player still inside of Cash, and he does not. HUD's going to shut him down. So these low HP players of Outlast are just going to try and have to force their way into the building. The cutoff of HUD is perfect. He has a long-range engagement, and Floops is going to find another one. And Outlast are just falling apart at the seams here. TEMPR have absolutely read them like a book, and they've done a perfect job at stalling out the time, stalling out the points into the map. There's 25 seconds left now, not too much to work with for Outlast. TEMPR should be able to hang on.
Only 20 seconds left. They just engaging in these isolated engagements. Two players jumping through the same window. And as I talked about last round, Outlast playing together as a team, even when they're losing those initial engagements, this round, or last round rather, now, it was a complete opposite. When they lost those initial engagements, they started to throw out isolated 1v1s. And for example, that one player doing a solo push up red onto HUD, trying to compensate for losing those initial picks and not being able to trade them in the mid round. And because of that, you continue to just dig yourself in a hole. But the thing for Outlast is you're up 3 rounds. You're able to, do a little fluke round like that and not result too much, but it can't be a continued mistake, because if you do continue to do these mistakes, if you continue to try to make up for these, really sloppy first round engagements with isolated plays, you're going to find yourself on overtime.
And the situation, or at least the solution for Outlast, at least in this round, seems to be let's bring a lot more utility to try and help out with the executes, but maybe we don't have to execute in that 5 versus 5 that we've seen them do in previous attempts on this site. They're 1-1 on it so far, and well, I have to think that with the Capital paired with the Osa, it's likely going to mean that we see a large emphasis being forced on that church wall once again. But we don't really have much dedicated hard breach, so maybe Outlast decides to just go for a hatch drop. Not exactly sure what the read here is from Outlast because, like I said, just 4 of those can openers, no dedicated hard breach, and really the lack of range hard breach is going to be the main problem here.
Yeah, not only the lack of range hard breach, but I do think we're going to see a late round drop execute. We're seeing Rai Rai bring out Capitao. He's going to be able not only to, cut off lines of sight with that smoke, but also use that fire to push out players, and then potentially maybe Austin will take that defuse and try to plant behind a shield. But the thing is, it's going to be up to Outlast to not only clear out these players, but save that utility early on. And just as I say that, Zonky wins his first initial entry engagement, and now that is your smoke gone. That is a huge play. Now all you have is 2 C4s left, and Capcam hasn't even placed all of his traps down.
Yeah, HUD might just be waiting to try and figure out where the main execute is going to come from for Outlast, but he's not going to have much more time to do it because his teammates are falling all around him, and well, that's most of the roam game cleared out for TEMPR. It's going to be left to the final 3 members to try and hold on to this game on the site. Actually, no, Hectic's still on the roam, so it's going to be even harder. Potentially, if Outlast decide to just go straight onto the site here, they could just use their man advantage to that big favor of theirs and just push everybody out of position and try to force a retake from above. It doesn't seem like that's going to be what they're going to do, however. They've still got a lot of their players situated on the top floor. In fact, all of their players are still on the top floor of the building. They're just now starting to convert that down to the first floor. And while they do have a lot of soft destruction to work with, they don't have that hard destruction like we mentioned. They're going to have to be very careful when it comes to clearing it out. And just 3 drones remaining is going to end up costing them a lot of... Now the man count is equalized, and now in the favor of TEMPR. The lack of drones proves crucial. They don't have any idea that Hectic is here. He's able to find 2, and now TEMPR find themselves in an advantageous position. Zonky has, like I said, potentially just worked his way into the site. Actually, the both remaining members of Outlast are just inside of Armory. The C4 going to come out, probably going to get the plant from here, and indeed it will. It's going to be all up to Zonky in the 1 versus 2. Just 45 seconds left for him, and he has no idea where these players are.
With 40 seconds left, that late aggression retake rather from TEMPR worked out perfectly, and now Zonky, being that star player with 30 seconds left, has to find these 2 players if he wants to win this first map for his team.
Like we said, Zonky now starred for utility. He has none of those Yinkandas left, no drones, and now he's going to use the last of his hard breach. He's going to try to use that to cover the sound of him planning, however, but I believe the intel from TEMPR is good. They're going to start to push up on it. The plant is going to go down, however, but he's going to get lit up from inside of Blue. He has no idea that the player is swinging from box 2, and Floops is able to pick up his 3rd for the round. He's going to get the defuse as well, and TEMPR now are just 1 round away from forcing overtime. A beautiful retake there in the dying seconds, despite the fact and the best efforts of the Ying.
TEMPR doing a great job, and now they have effectively made Outlast take their time out, because while Outlast did win those initial first 2 entry engagements, TEMPR realized that they could not let Outlast hit site in a 3v5 for them rather. So they aggressed and continued to push pressure. And because Outlast was so complacent, because they got those first two entry engagements, they felt comfortable and they didn't expect those two players playing together by main stairs and bathroom. And because of that, that allowed those two players for Temper to get two big picks, three matter of fact, and just stunt the overall attack from Outlast without Outlast even expecting it.
I have to wonder if the fact that Outlast are kind of using a little bit of a less conventional mode of hard destruction, at least with the fact that they're bringing that Maverick and the Ace in most rounds, has kind of been hurting them because of the fact that they're, like I said, a little bit more limited and a little bit more, I guess, starved for actually getting open things such as those hatches. At least when we attack onto the basement, that might have been why we saw them put a lot of emphasis on those can openers, but we still didn't really see them put a lot of emphasis on those hatches. Of course, we did see them drop in through blue, but we haven't really seen them try to go for a kitchen and moto split push. So I wonder what changes they're going to make. Of course, we're not going to go back to the basement this time. We're going to head to CCTV and cash. This is actually the first time that TEMPR have defended it. So a little bit of a unknown factor heading in here to what could be potentially the round that sends us to overtime.
You asked what Outlast's answer was for that. And in that timeout, or matter of fact, what came out of that timeout was Monty. That answer back will be that Monty, will be Vipoa on that Monty. This is Outlast's answer, and rather how they compensate for their overall, I guess, lack of droning in that late round, because Monty, not only can he clear space and take map control, but he's just a walking drone with a pistol in his pocket. And honestly, if we look at last time Outlast played this map, they used Monty a lot on the attack, and I'm really surprised it took them not only a timeout, but the last round on attacking in regulation for them to bring this Monty out. They really did try to change their overall game plan and how they attacked Clubhouse, but because they find themselves, because they find their, I'd say newfound strategies they're trying to bring in, they're falling back on that Monty. They're realizing, okay, you know what, we're overcomplicating things a little bit too much. Let's go back to our bread and butter. Let's go back. Let's feel a lot more comfortable. And in the last round of regulation, the answer you asked for is that Monty.
Not only the Monty, but that Capital as well indicates that they might be putting a lot of emphasis on Garage. And, well, it's going to be a little bit easier for them to actually take care of Garage because of the fact that there's no Azami and no Amai on the board for TEMPR. So TEMPR putting a lot of their eggs in defending not only from below, but also inside of the bedroom side of the map. Just because of the fact that, like I said, you don't have that Azami to make Raptors an absolute fortress. And while you do have a lot of stall utility in the form of that Goyo and the Maestro, you still don't have a lot to actually deal with the push-in from Outlast whenever it does come.
Yeah, with about a minute left, not a whole lot has been done by Outlast, but that fire bolt from Capital is going to be used to try to push out Schmitty to help Vipoa take control, but it's not going to do a whole lot. It's going to burn a lot of his damage and make him a little bit uncomfortable, but it's not going to push Schmitty out. And now, not only is Vipoa, but Outlast, they've not been able to push this player out, but now Vipoa is put in a very dangerous or uncomfortable situation, and Schmitty is just allowed to sit and waste even more time. And not only that, he still has one of his gas canisters on top Raptors.
When you've got Floofs down below, he has the pings on where the Monty is, so he's going to chuck out a C4, but the Monty thankfully is going to move away at the last second. That's not going to do much in terms of the utility game, and now Vipoa is going to have the opportunity to work his way up Raptors and try and figure out potentially try and leverage some control, but no, he's going to put his shield down, and Schmitty's able to punish him. These canisters from the Goyo not even needed to help finish off the Monty, and now Outlast have lost a lot of the factor that they were going to use to try and get their execute going. Another one falls as well. Drix is able to shut down the Brava, who had been a very influential factor, gaining a lot of control of the defender utility. But it's going to be a little bit better now for Outlast as they finally are going to start working their way in the garage. They have no idea. Actually, they have a little bit of an idea of the players going on side of Raptors, and they are finally going to finish Schmitty off. So now garage control for the attack, and just 40 seconds left to try and actually leverage it into the plant. They still have 3 players inside of cash. All the players from TEMPR stacked up to try and hold out for the final 30 seconds. The smoke's going to start coming in. This fire is just burning away at the time. The good news is for Outlast is that they have a lot of the range destruction still available in terms of hard breach, so they're still going to be able to open up themselves away into the default plant. But Drix down below, going for a retake. Outlast has no idea. He can punish this attack, but he's read like a book. From below, he's failed, and now Outlast with a man advantage with 10 seconds left. They have top red control as well. But oh no, Hectic has the wrong read for the C4. He's gonna find a kill, but it's not gonna matter. The plant's gonna go down. He's gonna push up red, and Rai is gonna shut him down. Outlast are gonna take Clubhouse, and they put themselves just one round away from surviving an XGS Spring Burst.
Outlast almost losing their grasp, the lead they initially had, but that last regulation round, they grab onto it and they take it away. They take away TEMPR's hopes of overtime. And that round kind of just felt like Outlast hitting their head on a solid wall, but eventually that wall, being TEMPR's defense, eventually broke down. Outlast gaining the map control and utility and intel they needed, and eventually they found those picks. TEMPR getting a little bit too aggressive, overswinging, and they were punished for it. And because of that, TEMPR's map pick is now lost. Even if they lose, or rather win this next map, they still now have to play Nighthaven if they want to win this series.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier on, we'll talk about it a little bit more if we actually get to that map, but not a good sign for TEMPR if we end up going there. But just looking back at how that map played out overall, I feel like the main story that we have to talk about is the fact that Outlast, while they struggled a little bit, were ultimately the more proficient attacking team. They ended up getting a 3-3 half, and that really was the decider. They had those really strong gym attacks that we saw, which was really the difference that put them over the hump.
Yeah, no, it was most definitely the difference, but also it was just the ability for Outlast to adapt and change how they were playing against TEMPR, and just really change and just adapt toward what TEMPR was bringing towards them. And it didn't take them a couple rounds. They did it in, 1 to 2 rounds. That Monty did work. It was kind of, a last-ditch effort. They just wanted to feel comfortable. They wanted to go back to something they were, comfortable with, something they've done before, and it happened to work out, but it almost didn't work out. We could have been on overtime right now. It was a very close last round, and it was honestly just those little mistakes TEMPR was making that eventually turned into bigger mistakes.
I think another thing worth pointing out is the fact that Outlast were better at executing under the pressure. We saw them in multiple occasions have to execute into those 5v5 scenarios, and while they struggled, at least in their first attempt, they ended up coming back and doing much better in the later portions of that second half, which, again, was ultimately the reason that they had more success on their attack, was the fact that I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they've been together for a little bit longer, so they're a little bit more coordinated. So that's just kind of really the story of it. And, I mean, just looking ahead to Border, this is a strong map for both teams. Of course, TEMPR are 2-0 on it. Outlast are 2-1, so both of them have a winning record. But really the thing worth noting is don't really know the caliber of teams that TEMPR beat in the qualifiers, so we'll just kind of have to see how they play it out. But that's coming up next. We've got a break for you between then, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to map number 2 of our second matchup of the day for the Xenon Gaming Spring Burst. It's Nomical and Goose. We are pleased to bring you this matchup between Outlast and TEMPR. And like we said, it's a Group A matchup. It's elimination, and it was Outlast who took map 1 of Clubhouse 7-5 after really the difference in that map being the fact that Outlast was able to execute better on their attacks. But looking ahead to Border, it's a very strong map for both teams. It's going to be TEMPR having a record of 2-0 in their qualifiers, and Outlast having 2 wins as well, but they did suffer a loss. And actually, what was the very first map of the very first qualifier, where they lost to Valkyrie 7-4. But still, they've proved that they're very strong on that since then.
Yeah, Border also not being played too much in this group stage overall, being banned 7 times total. So honestly, we haven't seen too much in this group stage. We've seen it played, overall, I believe 5 times combined with both teams. And while Outlast did lose it, they still had 2 wins compared to TEMPR's 2 wins. So this is both an evenly matched playing ground for both teams, but it's also going to be TEMPR to actually answer back, as they lost their first map, but not only the first map, but their map pick, TEMPR banning Ying. I really like that pick, especially not only because they're starting on defense, but on a map with these long corridors where you have to take site control very quickly. Ying is going to be a really good ban, especially towards Outlast.
And I have to think we see something maybe like the Monty ban here. We've seen that Outlast are not afraid to use
There
it.
it
And
is. From
okay,
Outlast.
wait.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's Outlast to
Okay.
ban that out.
I mean, we were right, but we did expect Outlast to ban it.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised because we've seen that they really like using the Monty, and they really are successful when they bring it out. So a little bit surprised by that ban, but the zombie ban, not too surprising. It's a very open map, like you mentioned, a lot of long hallways, a lot of long corridors that you have to worry about. So having the Azami is going to make it a lot harder for the defense to try and hold on to those areas. And I imagine we see a Solus ban here. Maybe we see a curveball, maybe a Mira, but I would imagine it'd be Solus.
Yeah, I'd imagine it'd be so, especially because of like how much vertical, especially directly onto the site. But Fenrir being banned out, I wouldn't say that's very unsurprising. As we talked about those long corridors, if you walk into a hallway and get Fenrir gadget, that's just an easy swing from the defenders. So that's just going to be an annoyance operator being, banned out, taken away. But Outlast starting on the attack rather than starting on the defense the last round. And Outlast actually, being a really good attacking team, TEMPR actually being somewhat of a better attacking team in the groups so far statistically from their first map. But even if TEMPR does win here, sure, it is their favorite map, but we haven't seen these teams in group stage play a best of 3. Their last match was a best of 1, but it's still going to be TEMPR's job, not only in this round, but this map as a whole, to answer back. And if they want to go on to the third map to keep their chances alive for this tournament, they need to win here and now.
Well, they are on the more advantageous side to try and get themselves a big lead to try and secure themselves that third map. Like you mentioned, defense has been really strong overall on Border, at least recently at events such as SI. I'm not exactly sure the specific numbers, but I know it's near 60% for the defense. And looking at the first attacking round, it's going to be a lot of information being brought out by Outlast. You've got not only that Grim to try and gain information when it comes to the execute, but you've got that Dokubi to help with the roam clear to gain information as well. As far as the defense, you've got that Solus, like we mentioned, such a strong map for her, and it's going to gain a lot of information, especially because of the fact that you've got a lot of tools that can be spotted by that Solus scanner. You've got the Grim Bees, you've got the Dokubi's call as well, and so not only that, but paired with the castle, and it's going to mean it's a lot harder for Outlast to try and take map control.
Yeah, that's a really interesting mirror from Drix, actually placing it facing the east side by stairs. So it looks like that TEMPR is going to actually be relying on this, top north hold, trying to, maybe predicting that Outlast is going to be doing more of an east stairs side take. But the thing is, if they can get control of Brick relatively easily and quickly, that position on top main stairs with that Mira is going to be in jeopardy, because that's going to be such big control. But the thing is, Hectic in a very powerful position here, not only with the shotgun, but he has plenty of mute jammers to deny not only drone intel, but also other intel. But actually, he's the first one to swing in, he gets zonky. Eventually, he is traded back and punished by LeBron. But actually, it's Flutes to take some damage off of that engagement.
Well, a lot of control being asserted for Outlast over on this east side of the map. You can see they have worked their way in. They've started to put some pressure on the staff room area of the map as well. And They found an opening pick because of it, but Floofs is going to finally respond, and it's going to get even better as I believe Floofs just got another down, and how about a third for him, including another pickup, but he's finally going to get shut down, and they're going to have the opportunity to pick Yov back up, so a little bit more manageable for the side of Outlast now. They don't have much to work with. They do still have those openings created, but those castle barricades are going to make it a lot harder for them to actually work their way into the site, especially because of the fact that the pingers are coming in for the defense, and it's going to give away the game for Outlast when they try to push in through Fountain.
Yeah, that initial Mira and break hold working out wonders for TEMPR, but actually it doesn't matter because Outlast is starting to finally claw back. Yov being picked up, it's his first kill for this round, and now with, you know, relatively a decent amount of time for these last two players, Yov is going to be on low health, so he's going to need the edge in his gunfights if he wants to win and hopefully take this first round for Outlast.
Austin going to start working his way, and he's got that diffuser in his pocket, so he's going to be the person that's going to need to survive. But the swing's going to come in. It's a perfect cross as Austin finds his third. It's now all up to Drix in the 1 versus 2. Outlast have brought this back beautifully, and Drix doesn't even have a C4 to try and deny from below. He's going to have to retake back up the middle staircase. The barbed wire going to give his position away. He's going to have to try and work his way in, and he's not going to have a lot of information to work with. He is actually going to be able to pick back up his own C4. It's going to go out, and he might find the down and finish off both of them. How about that from Drix, the Kobe from long range? I know you're a LeBron fan, but that was a beautiful toss, and Drix is able to clutch out the round for TEMPR.
That was a beautiful first round from TEMPR, and then a beautiful answer back from Outlast. That castle downstairs trying to rotate up metal, giving that player an isolated 1v1, initiating Outlast to get a 2v2, but it doesn't matter because that last player from the side of TEMPR just throws out an all Hail Mary C4 and gets the round. And, you know, while TEMPR did have a complete chokehold in that first round, the fact that they were Outlast was even able to get close to winning that round, you know, it just throws up some, you know, red flags inside of TEMPR, but nonetheless, they're able to just, you know, take that round away.
And I feel bad for Outlast in that round because of the fact that Austin put in such a good effort to try and bring it back to his team. They had the advantage and they had the opportunity to get that plant down. Just a random siege moment where the C4 is allowed to be picked back up by the player who threw it out early in the round, cost them the round. I mean, condolences to them. TEMPR with a beautiful start to the game, and we're going to rotate over towards Bathroom Tellers, and once again, a common theme for this site and for this map in general, really. You've got that castle being brought out once again to try and stall out time and try to force Outlast to try and burn a lot of their utility off the site, and it's going to make it a lot safer for TEMPR to hold this top floor.
You know, and it's safety that TEMPR needs because, you know, when they're being made uncomfortable in these, you know, first initial situations, that's when they lose these gunfights. But, you know, having these really big, you know, extended holds, putting a lot of off-site utility, you know, gives TEMPR this comfortability to hold this extension and deny Outlast this time. And Outlast, you know, while in the first round they did struggle with, you know, that time denial, they eventually were able to claw back. And honestly, if I'm TEMPR right now, I'm looking to just continue to just, you know, deny that. Don't let them get that comeback because that was a round that Outlast still could have won. That was a C4 that if he didn't have that round, probably would have gone to Outlast. So if I'm TEMPR right now, sure, your early rounds are comfortable, but you also got to make sure that you put yourself in a very good position into the late round.
Those Dokkaebi calls coming out, it's going to make TEMPR a little bit more uncomfortable when it comes to the top floor room because of the fact that you see now that Boa is able to work his way in and find the opening pick for his team, and Loose now off the board. He was putting in good work in the last round on that Aruni, but not going to do much more, and well, Drix is able to continue his reign of terror through the first 2 rounds. He's able to pick up another one, finishes off the only hard-breaching utility that Outlast had available to them, and it's going to get worse as HUD with a drive-by over towards Fountain is able to find another one. And now Outlast on a significant back foot. They don't have a lot to work with. Like I said, no hard breach, and even with that, a lot of utility off the board because of the fact that you really only have the OSA utility to deal with to try and help yourself with the next game.
Yeah, not only is the utility just being denied, the players themselves are also being denied. Drix and HUD just continuing to put that dagger deeper and deeper into the throat of Outlast's attack. And now Zonky finds himself in a 1v4. Sure, he has a minute left, but he has no map control, no drone intel, and just absolutely nothing. He doesn't even have the health for it. So right now, it looks like he's just going to stay outside and give his team, effectively, an unofficial, tactical timeout. They're going to be able to talk through, understand, what their mistakes are, because they've just essentially lost 2 rounds in a row. It honestly should be 1-1. That last, C4 engagement didn't go their way, but with 30 seconds left, that initial first engagement, those initial first entry engagements just did not go the way. They didn't even take relatively any health aside from HUD. And if I'm Outlast right now, I'm thinking to myself, we have to change something up soon, because if we don't, we're going to start losing even more rounds.
I mean, we saw this in the last round, too. While Outlast were able to bring it back, like we saw, they really struggled with those opening engagements. They ended down in a 3 versus 5 and were able to bring it back. And this time, they didn't have that miraculous comeback in terms of man advantage, and it ended up costing them. I mean, you saw it was an absolutely hopeless situation for the Dokkaebi because of the fact that he didn't have a lot of utility to work with, and the team as a whole didn't as well, because of the fact that they lost those man entries early. They didn't have anything to deal with the castle barricades, and it really hindered their push in, and we saw them fall very early on. So 2 successful defenses for TEMPR now. They're going to continue their site rotation over towards ventilation and workshop. And once again, we see a very aggressive lineup being brought out by them. A lot of that information being in the back pocket of the pulse is going to assist with the aggression, because of the fact that you can kind of use that pulse scanner to try and spot out where the attack is coming from and potentially have a little bit of a more explosive round from below, because you have HUD with a C4 as well. So Flus can give callouts to his team and potentially assist in finding some opening picks, because the initial indication from Outlast is that they want to go and try to take from above.
Yeah, and I think Outlast right now are just not playing the game they need to. I want to say that TEMPR just really fell back and just, changed up how they approached that first round, but they didn't. You just saw HUD all the way over in offices, all by himself. No utility aside from his gun in his castle barricades, and Outlast aren't really being, pushed back a whole lot. TEMPR not changing their plan, still having these players in these isolated situations, and Outlast just not taking advantage of it and not using their drone utility effectively, and because of that, they're being punished for it. So I wouldn't say necessarily right now it's TEMPR, bringing out a really good defense. While they still are, don't get me wrong, their overall site execute and their overall extensions are really good. But it's just what Outlast is not doing that's losing them these rounds.
Hang on a second. Schmitty's running Iron Sights on the MP5K.
I mean, yeah, the
I
buff
guess
doesn't
he's
come till
prepping-
next season. I don't know if he does that.
He's prepping for the next season, I was going to say, but yeah. It's going to be an opening engagement, and I believe a trade. In fact, yeah, it's going to be the pulse off the board, and Fluke's not really going to have much impact. But like you mentioned, yeah, that hard breach off the board is going to be an even more crucial pick for the side of TEMPR. They're going to have a lot less stress on their shoulders, and it's going to leave Outlast to try and funnel their way in through single doorways, and those long hallways, like we mentioned in the pregame, can be such a crucial blow. Those angles work both ways. It's going to be a lot harder for Outlast to work their way in.
Outlast having a problem with that drone utility, but now with that hard breach gone, that drone utility is going to be even more fundamental if they want to just push in through these hallways, push in through these doors, because you can't create those new lines of sight aside from, shooting the soft wall. Those hard breach walls are going to be closed. So if you want to push out these roamers, if you want to take map control from the defenders, you're going to have to use 2 players, a drone, to push out these isolated players. For example, Drix, yet again, just like HUD in the round before, in an isolated situation with no utility, no drones aside from his gun and his Legion mines. In Outlast, they have the players, they have the drones to push him out, but they're just kind of waiting, just hoping that he's pushed out. Finally, Zonky bringing out his forest drones to flush out that player, but they're wasting so much utility and time on this one player who may not even get him. They do have the pings, but they're being crossfired all the way from sight. Lyrai eventually does get him, but it's eventually traded back.
I mean, you saw so much utility dedicated there to try and clearing out Drix, and I was worried that the follow-up might not come and they wouldn't actually find the conversion onto it, but they finally did. Well, it did cost them a lot of their remaining utility and a lot of their time. They only have 1 flash grenade and a couple of Zofia impacts to try and help them with the execute. So a lot of, I guess, a lack of utility coming in from Outlast, and even worse for them is they don't even have control from above. You can see Hectic. He's got footholds to try and assist when the push comes in. and they know the focus is going to be put on this ventilation area. And here comes the push in. Rai getting the plant down from server. The pings are coming in on the player inside of the main lobby, but they're not even going to engage. Nobody has information on the plant coming down. It's going to be a post plant in favor of Outlast. The push is going to come in. Zonkey's going to find that kill, and it's all falling apart. It's all up to the smoke above. Still 2 toxic bays in pocket. That's a nice down onto him, but Rai is able to shut him down and finally give Outlast their first attacking round. Beautifully played there in the late round to try and sneak in and get their post plant.
Outlast, as I said before initially, because they didn't have that hard breach utility, they were forced to use their drones, and they used those drones perfectly. They used it not only to find those players, but completely counter what TEMPR was throwing at them, finding a crack in their defense, in their line of sight, as you saw, planting in Workshop in that little corner where there was no vertical, there was no crossfires onto that little spot. It was basically a blind spot that TEMPR had no control or intel on, and because of that, Outlast identified that efficiently and quickly said, okay, let's hit this specific spot. This is really the only spot we can hit. But also, one thing I want to, think about from TEMPR is, obviously they were not going to know that Outlast only had one hard utility. But the thing is, you had bathroom wall open, and the only utility you had holding bathroom was a Legion with his gun and Legion mines. It just really feels like TEMPR didn't put enough utility on that position because that whole entire bathroom wall was open. And sure, Outlast didn't have a hard breach, but they didn't need it because it was just opened up and ready. And TEMPR effectively, having Crossfire saying, okay, we opened up for a reason, we want you to come there. But Outlast identifying a crack and just not playing into what TEMPR was setting up for them.
Man, like you said, Outlast identified that crack. I feel like the main reason was that they chose to execute through bathroom like that, at least initially, was the fact that they identified that TEMPR, while they didn't initially set up for that type of execute, leaving Drix all alone, they didn't even rotate much of their utility and manpower over to that portion either. And you saw a lot of players over towards the their side, not even really above, and that ended up being the factor of that round. Now, looking ahead to this round, you've got that castle once again, but thankfully for the side of Outlast, you've got plenty of operators to try and deal with some of this utility. The only bad news is, for the side of Outlast, is they don't really have a lot in terms of burn utility to try and deal with something like the Rooney gates, which can be an absolute thorn, because remember, they do a lot of damage if you just have to run through them. The really only option that Outlast has here is potentially to try and use those concussion mines from the Zofia, and that's really going to leave them limited because they've only got 2 of those, and if they aren't careful, they can just shoot and reactivate those barricades.
As we touched on before, we shot those 2 entry players, but Austin getting the first pick on the Blues, that's good. But as I was saying, we looked at Yuv, we compared him to Dritz. Both of those players being one of the first players to be in those entry engagements. The first game on Clubhouse favoring Yuv a little bit, but on this second map, we're actually seeing Driss just completely being thrown into these positions, whether he wants to or not. He's been able to fall up and go up to the task, and because of that, he's been able to get these first entry engagements, and he's 4-1. Having, I wouldn't say a bad game, but a little bit of a slower game, and he continues it, getting a huge shot onto Austin and just denying access to the site, and he follows it up with a second.
A C4 from Smitty as well makes things even worse for Outlast. This is even more of a crucial and critical situation than they were in the first time they tried to attack onto this site, when they ended up losing it despite having the man advantage. And now it's all up to Vipoa, alone outside of Armory. He doesn't have anything going for him, and he's got to deal with Drix. How about it? It's Drix's world, and we're just living in it. From the bomb chassis, he finds 3 kills in that round, dominates the Outlast push in from the main breach, and, well, despite having the hard breach available, they still struggle to attack on border. TEMPR are absolutely running away with this first half.
Yeah, yet again, speaking on comparing the players on Yuv and Dritz, just, going away from the actual, statistics, away from the scoreboard, Yuv, is a different kind of entry player. He's usually the player, whether it's on attack or defense, to, actually activate and, push for those entry engagements, rather than Dritz, as we just saw in that last round. He didn't really go out of his way to start those engagements. Rather, he just kind of like welcomed it in. He didn't push back. He continued to hold site, continued to hold those power positions. And as I was speaking about it last round, he got 3 huge picks. It just really goes to show that if Driss is shooting, if he is winning those initial 1v1 engagements, it just not only wins rounds for Temper, but it makes it so much easier because they don't have to worry about going to that late round being down from having a losing early half of that round.
I wonder if Outlast are regretting that Montang ban at this point, because it seems like they've really struggled with their coordination on the attacks. Despite the fact that we've seen those hero plays from Temper, like we just saw from Griggs, I feel like overall Outlast are having a lack of information and where the defenders from Temper are, and I feel like that Montang, had they allowed it to actually stay up, would have been able to really enable them on their attacks. Because it seems like not only are they just unsure, but they're also just scared when it comes to entering into the building. We've seen them lose a lot of these opening engagements because of the fact that they just aren't sure of themselves.
It just really goes to show that, those first initial engagements, even if it's not an actual gunfight, whether it's just, droning, when it's just shot out and your intel is just completely denied by Temper, Outlast doesn't really have an answer back. And because, that Grim being banned, or actually not Grim being banned, but the Ying being banned, you don't really have a whole lot of utility to being able to compensate. As you still be in that Montaigne, you don't really have that, power operator that's just basically a big drone to make up for that. And as we saw, the round they won was because they had a whole plethora of utility and intel on the actual defenders on site in that late execute. But when we see Outlast lacking this intel, they don't have a whole lot else to actually make up for it.
Well, they're going to try, at least in this round, to have a little bit more of that information because they've got that Dokbi on the board to help them with the roam clear. They can use it to try and potentially steal away those Valkyrie cameras. You've got a lot of information available to the side of Temper with a bulletproof camera in HUD's back pocket as well, potentially placed near the site. And for the moment, Outlast seem to be emphasizing a lot of the focus towards this top floor, and they've got one player inside a fountain to worry about. Not exactly sure if they have the right read on this player, and it doesn't seem like they do, as Hector's going to go ahead and do a mistimed swing and eat a little bit of damage for his troubles. He's got the support of HUD playing inside a fountain as well. Look at this cat. Look at this camera from the Valkyrie. It's giving away a lot of information for where the attack from Outlast is coming from, and it's going to enable the C4 to come out. It's not going to finish off the ace, but Austin is allowed to survive, and like I said, there's still a lot of information available to the side of Temper here. Just pinging away, and there's the opening pick going towards Flus.
We're continuing to see this intel just favor these entry engagements. You can't really win these entry engagements if you're just try swinging, if you don't have intel. As I say that, Austin eventually getting Flus, making up for those 2 picks gone, but the problem is Zofia, that one operator that's going to be able to get rid of that hard utility, and now Zonky with your IQ that takes away not only a whole lot of intel, but also you cannot find these Valkyrie cams. Hectic just actually by Poa dropping down, but gets a kill onto Hectic. Eventually, Schmitty retrades, it's the refrag, Rai making up for it, and now with 30 seconds left, we find ourselves in a 2v2, but all 4 players completely opposite sides of the map.
Now it's all up to Austin, who's inside of the side. Drake swings once again and shuts him down, and Temper widen their lead. And like you said, a lot of that had to do with the fact that the Valkyrie cameras were still allowed to survive, despite the fact that they had the IQ. I'm not exactly sure where the IQ was located there, but I mean, if you had it, the IQ near the positions of security where those Valkyrie cameras were positioned, that could have been a completely different round because Temper would have had no idea where the push was coming from.
Temper just honestly completely just reading into how Outlast is playing. And as I said, in the after the first round, it's not all just Temper. It's not Temper playing a really good defense while they still are. It's Outlast making these really small mistakes. And the main problem yet again is that drone economy. It's being shot down, and when they do have the drones, aside from the one round they won, which was due to those drones being used effectively, they don't use them enough, and when they are denied the drone intel, when they're being shot, when they can't get the intel, they don't play up in numbers, and they are doing the same mistake I said last time. They're throwing out these isolated 1v1s, trying to, compensate for losing those initial engagements, for losing that intel, and honestly, if you lose that intel, you just got to play together. You just have to continue to play the game. Don't let Temper set the pace. Don't let Temper change how you play, because when that happens, Temper's going to win. If you play Temper's game, 9 times out of 10, they're going to win. If you're Outlast, I've said this many times, you don't have that firepower, even if you're down a man, even if you're down your intel, you don't have a lot of drones, you have to continue playing doubling up. Double up, find those 1v1s, even if you don't have the intel, just hope there's a player there and always expect a player there.
And you mentioned the fact that there's been a lack of coordinated drone work and a lack of information for LS. I fear for what that would be like if the Stolas was being brought by TEMPR. Because remember, this is happening with just the mute on the board. They are really struggling in this department. And, well, the good news for them, at least 40 seconds in, they still have 9 of their drones available to try and figure out where these players are, at least up above. Because you can see a lot of emphasis being put on holding onto this armory position by both Schmitty and Hectic. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for Outlast to try and clear this out because they've got a lot of that utility clear to try and burn out with that Wamai on the board. And even with Floofs holding down below, the C4 going to come out from Floofs. Is going to do a lot of damage to you, but it's not going to shut him down. He's still going to have at least about half of his HP, and he's still going to be having the opportunity to try and work his way into armory once they clear out these defenders.
With a minute 40 left, for the first time in a while, TEMPR hasn't shut down Outlast. Outlast not losing these engagements because they really haven't initiated it. They haven't put themselves to either, win these or at all. Loose down below without a C4, so he's not going to be able to take anybody out from below. All he's going to be able to do is create and put pressure onto Outlast, and that's exactly what Outlast is dealing with right now, is somewhat phantom pressure. They're not dealing with a direct player playing onto them, just players shooting, just not being able to figure out and find these players. But the thing is, you have a lot of drone economy. You have a lot of drone intel. Sure, that Mute Jammer is denying it, but with a minute left, you have to start to actually, start setting up your site, execute, even if you don't have the drone intel and the economy you have or you want.
Schmitty and Drix are in the perfect position to potentially go for a retake up the east stairs, and they're actually going to go for it. Drix, 9-1, has been absolutely shutting down Outlast on this map. They're going to split up a little bit to try and make it a little bit harder for the push to come in, and there you go. There's the first kill going the way of TEMPR. It's going to leave Outlast scrambling with just 40 seconds left. Their flanks have been completely cut off. They had little to no utility to try and help with that. Drix finds another one. Schmitty shuts another one down as well. It's all up to Rai and Zonky to try and salvage this half, potentially make it a little bit more manageable. They're just going to skip the top floor and work their way into sight. They get 2 picks going their way. How about a third? It's down to a 2 versus 2. Zonky and Rai have worked their way into the site, but from above, they've lost all that control. And it's going to enable them to finally find a pick back. It's all up to Zonky now in the 1 versus 2 with Drix situated nearby and the Valkyrie cameras pinging away the Twitch's location. 15 seconds left and the diffuser is down. Drix on the retake is going to potentially have the perfect shutdown on this. Zonky's going to attempt to plant. Drix is nearby. He's going to have to get off and, well, he's going to go for the swing, finds one, but it's not going to matter as the Wamai is just situated above. He's able to shut down that plant and give TEMPR a 5 to 1/2. Beautifully played by the Wamai there, and TEMPR are looking really good to potentially send us to a map 3.
This is not where we as casters or the teams and players thought we would be finding ourselves going into the second half. TEMPR taking 5 rounds, even on the defense, all the stats, every game before pointed towards this being, somewhat of an even matchup, but Outlast just not being able to find the intel and not being able to compensate effectively for it. And because of that, sure, they're on defense, but they find themselves just 2 rounds away going in for last and third map. Sure, Outlast, they could come back and win, 5 to 6 rounds in a row, but they have to play flawless. In these last rounds, this last half, we've watched them. It's been everything but flawless. It's been such small mistakes that's been losing. They haven't been necessarily making these really big mistakes, these really, big, haven't been overlooking much. It's just these really small mistakes they just haven't really been able to fix. And when they do fix them, it takes them, maybe 2 to 3 rounds to really fix the mistakes.
And the interesting thing about this is the fact that, remember, this is Outlast map pick. They wanted to be here. They felt comfortable like they had a plan that could absolutely shut down TEMPR, and the exact opposite has happened here. Mind you, it is on the defense, so we'll see if the trend is going to hold as we switch sides. But still, after Outlast stole the map pick of TEMPR away on Clubhouse, I was like, okay, maybe it's just it was an even game. Maybe it was just the fact that Outlast got a little bit luckier, and maybe they were a little bit more coordinated. But here, it just seems like they're absolutely being shut down. And it seems to be the solution for Outlast is just to be as aggressive as possible. They've got that Solus and they've got the Doc to really enable that aggression. The question is, are TEMPR going to be ready for it? Because they, in their own, have a very aggressive lineup.
Yeah, TEMPR, this whole entire map has just completely been reading what Outlast has been throwing at them, and because of that, Outlast bringing a completely different lineup, just trying to make them uncomfortable. We're seeing operators like the Lion. We have a Blitz and a Glass paired with that, so it's aggression, but very quick and direct aggression. And if Temper can effectively, deal with that, that's going to be what, in my opinion, is all of what Outlast has to throw at them. We're going to be seeing a map 3, but if this does work, it's going to give Outlast breathing room. Not a lot of breathing room, but it's going to be a start. In Temper, they could struggle here, but I'm just really worried.
Yeah, I'm worried too, especially because of the fact that, I mean, it seems like Temper has the guts to try and force this sort of blitz smoke execute through the main breach rather than sometimes where you would typically see it over towards the archive side of the map, especially when the Monty was on the board, but the kills are coming fast, and, well, it's gonna favor nobody at this point as the hop-in from Smitty is not gonna be punished. He's gonna be on low HP, sure, and he's not gonna get anything else for his trouble. He's finally gonna get punished by Vipoa, and Outlast regain their man advantage. Still, though, a lot of time for these final two members of Timber to work with, and they have good intel on the fact that most of the players are back in the site.
Outlast finally finding an answer back, but let's not speak too soon because with 50 seconds left, Temper is only down one player, and sure, you have the player on downstairs on Souls, but she hasn't found any utility, and because of that, she now effectively puts these last two players on the side of Outlast in sight in a 2v2, and if Temper can identify this, they could effectively push sight and force that 2v2, then putting Austin on the side of Solus outside and just completely cutting her off. But it just looks like with 30 seconds left, Temper is really just trying to playing and toying, not exactly sure what they want to do here.
Well, it seems to be the play to try and force the execute onto the Archive's position. You got Flus working his way in. It's actually going to go in favor of Temper as they're going to find that shutdown under Rai. But from below, Austin has a perfect read on the footholds. He's able to shut down that player, and Vipoa swings at the perfect time. That M590 once again proving its worth at short range, and the comeback is a long ways away, but it starts there as they get their first defense. Outlast seemingly proving why this is such a defender-sided map at the moment.
Temper trying to bring out those, very aggressive trick operators to make Outlast very uncomfortable. And while Outlast was initially uncomfortable, they had the players, they had the support, all to back them up, and they evened it out into a 3v3. And then you had the Ash in a position, effectively hoping that they won those engagements and got the man count up, because he didn't. He was forced into a 1v2 isolated match and he lost it. Honestly, lost a 1v1, didn't even really need the support from that player in archives. But the answer to Temper was not effective. Outlast finding their second round, as I had said before, give themselves a little bit of breathing room, but it's not a whole lot. Sure, they have a start, but they need at least 5 more rounds if they want to go to overtime, and 6 if they want to win it.
Oh, we're going to head down to bathroom for round number 8, and, well, an operator that you don't really see much anymore. It's going to be that alibi to potentially try and cause a little bit of confusion, especially when paired with that Frost. It's going to leave Temper potentially scrambling if they aren't careful to check their corners and check their feet. We'll just kind of have to see where they actually choose to play these operators, but for the moment, a lot of that focus once again being put on that fountain position, as well as a little bit of a horizontal extension and maybe a little bit of aggression coming out from the Solus as well. So Outlast with a really spread out but seemingly coordinated defense.
It was very coordinated, and Outlast, somewhat so far, not only the first round, but, in this first couple seconds of the round, dealing with it relatively well. Temper, what they've thrown out so far with that ace hasn't resulted with anything. Vipoa able to impact trick it, and now Temper has time to reassess and just, really look at what Outlast has set up for the defense. But you have such powerful positions, very good crossfires being held by these two players in Armory, in Visa, but it doesn't matter because Driss gets one. Another player swinging out, trying to get that refrag, but he loses it. Driss eventually being down by that Frost mat, but he's going to be able to revive himself. And in that situation, Outlast coming out with absolutely nothing.
I have no reason, or I don't blame Drix at all for not checking for that Frost Man there. You don't really see that, especially so far away from the site. But he's going to be on a little bit lower of HP. He's going to have a little bit of a movement nerf for just a little bit, but somebody is going to have to do the horrific job of slowing him down in this round, at least on the side of Outlast, because of the fact that he's been on an absolute tear through Border, and 13-3, really impressive from him. Even better performance what we saw in map 1, and by no means he was no slouch in map 1, but at the moment it seems like Outlast are still trying to be aggressive despite the fact that they're in such a man disadvantage, and it's going to be punished by Schmitty. I mean, it seems like the aggression just, while it may be a good idea, it just doesn't really seem coordinated, and it just keeps feeding picks to Temper.
No, there is no coordination, and those first two initial picks that Drix got, he wasn't droned in. He just dry peeked that half hole, got the kill, and then another player just dry swung him, hoping that he could catch him off guard. But Drix was not only ready for it, but aimed at the right in the exact position that player was swinging it, and because of it, he just kind of got a free kill based, backed off a kill, yet another kill that he honestly, in my opinion, should not have gotten because of that crossfire. And now with 40 seconds left, Outlast, what was a 2v5, is now a 2v4. They just don't really have enough, whether it be man count or just any map control whatsoever.
Schmitty's able to catch Austin looking the wrong way. It's going to leave Ipoa alone in the 1 versus 4. He's going to find one for his trouble. Eventually swings onto a second one. Is actually going to get the one on the player at the bottom of these stairs, but he's still got that player on his left to worry about, and one inside of the site as well. They have perfect pings on him because of those Grim Bees as well, and Smoke Grenade's going to cover the push in, the rotation for the plant, and just 15 seconds left. He can deny the plant on the Solus. Is he going to hit the shots? No, he missed. He had the perfect read on where the plant was going down, and he's not able to stop it. So Schmitty's able to shut him down as he goes for the rotation, and it's going to be match point for TEMPR. They look so good on this map, and well, that execute was done beautifully by the attacking side.
TEMPR doing a great job on both sides of this map of just getting that intel effectively and just using it effectively. Sure, teams can get intel, it's relatively easy to just drone out a couple of defenders, but the thing that TEMPR is doing is that they have players behind those drones to back up that intel and turn that intel into picks. And because Outlast are giving them these isolated 1v1s, TEMPR is just taking these easy gunfights and winning them. TEMPR is playing a very simplistic game of Siege currently, and Outlast just doing a little bit too much. TEMPR just overall a complete great answer back from what they did in map 1.
I have to wonder what the morale is like for Outlast right now, especially because it looks like we're heading to a map 3. We mentioned earlier on that Nighthaven, our third map, is a really strong map for Outlast historically when they play TEMPR, but still, it could actually go the way of TEMPR. Now, I'm not quite as confident as I might have been earlier on in Outlast, just because the momentum is firmly in their control, and Outlast, they're probably scratching their heads as to what's happening here. I mean, it's really quite simple, honestly. It's like we mentioned, they aren't very aggressive, which is a good idea, and we've seen a lot of it potentially try to work out, but I mean, they've been shut down because of the fact that their aggression isn't coordinated. They've been feeding 1v1s to players like Drix, and who's been absolutely shutting them down. So in this round, we've got an aggressive lineup. I would argue even more aggressive. The question is, are they going to actually coordinate that aggression?
Yeah, we also have yet another aggressive lineup coming from Outlast. Matter of fact, we have Solus to back up, give information, but you have Rai and Zonky on both the Oryx and the Vigil. They're going to be putting themselves in these very power-heavy positions, trying to just not only deny map control, but just really just put a thorn in the back of TEMPR. And speaking of Zonky, because of what I just spoke about, he's able to get the first pick on Deflus and eventually backed up by Rai now getting Drix, their star player, and your hard breach now gone. You've completely stunted the round for TEMPR.
Well, it's going to get even worse for the attack, as now you've lost Schmitty as well. That's probably one of your main execute-focused operators off the board. No more shields to potentially make the site a little bit safer for you to work into. And it's now up to Hectic and HUD to try and clutch things out. They are both actually outside of the building, so any potential ingresses that they made into the map earlier on are going to be absolutely shut down, and they're back to square one. And not only that, they have very limited drone information to work off of. You do still have 2 of those Bravo drones, but still, not a lot going in your favor. They have to try and pick things back up fast because of the fact that while TEMPR have given up this map control, you can see Outlast have done a beautiful job of retaking it, and they've positioned 3 players on the top floor.
And to be fair to TEMPR, Outlast hasn't necessarily changed up how they've been, attacking these roams. Both Rai and Zonky in just, very isolated, power positions, but this time around, it just worked in their favor. They just won the gunfights. Zonky, bringing that operator on the side of Vigil to deny intel. That definitely helped him. Rai though, not really having too much, sure he can bolt around, but that doesn't really deny him from being droned out. It just really feels like this round, Temper just got a little bit too comfortable, didn't do the basics they needed to, and because of that, Outlast took advantage of it. And surely, with only 45 seconds, they should be able to put the scoreline to 6-3. But as I said yet again, it looks like a major malfunction from Temper, and an easy fix nonetheless. And I just don't know if it's enough to push Outlast into overtime.
Yeah, like you said, there's still a long way to go, and it's going to be a flawless round for Outlast. That's a little bit more of a momentum builder, a little bit of a confidence boost for them. Really starts to see at least signs of why they wanted to come to this map. We haven't really seen much to kind of prove that they really knew what they wanted to do when they were coming here, but still, and I'm still worried. It's still a long way to go, and we've seen them struggle to defend a couple of these sites. That really was their best showing. I mean, it's hard to do better than a flawless round, of course, but still, last time we were on Armory, it came down to the fact that, well, Zonky and Drix were just really aggressive. They were able to punish those solo roams from Outlast. And question is, are we going to see them kind of do that more coordinated aggression that we saw in the last round, or will they kind of jump back and revert to what we saw originally?
If I'm Outlast right now, sure, I'm down 3 rounds. I'm 1 round away from going to map 3. Sure, it's my map pick, but preferably you'd want to win this 2-0 after winning your opponent's map pick. But the thing is, you cannot let Temper hold the pace. You have to continue to play your own game. You got to play it like it's 1-1. In that last round, it really felt like Outlast was playing their game, playing how they wanted to, and just, weren't really affected by the score count. And I want to continue to see that. Zonky bringing that vigil out yet again. As I said, sure, it's a very small and fundamental thing of just denying intel. But, that one operator, especially an operator on the side of a player like Zonky, who is roaming, holding those off-site power positions, just because he's able to deny that intel alone by himself without his teammates needing to waste intel, he just does so much. Outlast, I feel like they finally figured out what they need to do to, really push back Temper, really make them uncomfortable. But the thing is, you've done it on match point and you're down 3 rounds. And my question is it too late?
Yeah, I mean, still just 30 seconds in, and it looks like we're going to see a really aggressive lineup focused heavily on the later portions of the round. You've got that Grim on the board once again. You've got that line to help make it a little bit easier to execute in the later portions of the round, but Outlast have a really aggressive lineup once again. You've got that Solus and you've got that Vigil to potentially try and slow down the Temper attack. And I was just looking back through Liquipedia, just old matches from this Outlast, formerly Dilemma Squad, and through Element 2 and beyond, they really hadn't shown much as to why they wanted to pick Border. I mean, they didn't really have any results or any plays on it really in Element 2, and well, that's a beautiful shot from Hectic to open things up, and well, now Outlast find themselves once again on the back foot. They're going to have to put a masterclass performance in to try and keep themselves in this match, and Temper really looking to send us to Nighthaven here.
The thing for Outlast here is, while you did lose Zonky, up until now with Drix just solo pushing, Temper hadn't really done a whole lot to build off of that first pick. Outlast being able to deny map control, but Temper, really just finding their footing. The thing is, not a whole lot of time, but enough time has been wasted that it doesn't look like Austin has been thrown out below, Vipoa actually being down. Just a continuous unlucky plays for the side of Outlast. But if Temper do plant in Archives and Austin is in a position to deny it, this time waste from Outlast, even if they lost a player and may lose Vipoa soon, it could work out in their favor. But HUD going down below, being that player to address this vertical from below.
Well, it was big for the fact that Outlast was able to get Vipoa back up. He's only got 1 Toxic Vape left to try and stall out a plant, but they do also have Austin, like you mentioned, who potentially could rotate below because of the fact that so much of that flooring isn't safe for Temper when they work their way in. Just 40 seconds left now, but they're going to start to work things back in their favor as they found another pick and potentially a third. There you go, the swing from Smitty. That's another player. Rai goes down. It's all up to Vipoa and Austin, and it's going to fall apart even worse. It's all up to Austin, who's going to have to try and clutch things out. And how about a flawless round to send us away at map number 2? Temper comes storming back to steal away Outlast map, and we will go to Nighthaven Labs to settle the score. 1 team goes home, 1 team moves on with a date with SLB. We'll find out what exactly is going to happen
I'm very excited to see what's going to happen on map 3.
Oh, I'm most definitely excited to happen. Not only because, Nighthaven is just a very fun map. It's relatively still new compared to, maps like Order and Clubhouse. But going into this matchup before the first map in our pre-show, we both thought that, if TEMPR didn't win 2-0 going to that third map, it looked dire for them. But after this second map, after this complete comeback and just revamp of how TEMPR is approaching this series, honestly, it could go either way. It doesn't look as close as it initially did.
Yeah, and I misspoke. It is Team SBL, not SLB. Still, a monstrous opponent to potentially come up against for that decider matchup. This has been an incredible series so far. Like we said, TEMPR just came out of nowhere on that map and looked so good, and I have a huge confidence booster because of the fact that they were able to shut down all the aggression from Outlast. And like we said, that main thing that concerned me was the fact that the aggression wasn't really coordinated overall. It was a lot of those solo hero plays, which is kind of surprising because this team has been together for so long. They really might have been, at least you might have expected them to be a little bit more coordinated.
And the main problem that has came out from this second map for Outlast is that drone economy, that drone intel that they don't have, whether it be in the mid to late round, and that's because of TEMPR. You can, talk about how Outlast hasn't done a great job, but at the end of the day, it is TEMPR denying that, shooting the drones, denying the intel, and not giving away their positions. And that's why TEMPR took that first or second map, rather, and going into the third map, the final map, the map that will decide, it honestly comes down to that intel or Outlast. If they can fix that problem, they should have no problem winning it, but I'm scared if they can fix it. They have time, they have around, relatively, 5 to 10 minutes to fix it, but it's a problem they need to fix.
Yeah, and another thing that scares me, like you said, the lack of intel. They didn't have intel even when TEMPR wasn't even playing solos. They were struggling even when it was just a mute that they were coming up against. So, it's really scary. And they had the Dokkaebi too. So, there's a lot of different questions that have to be raised from that game. But, map number 3, like we both said, while we still have a lot of renewed confidence in TEMPR, it's still a really strong map. And Outlast have proven that they have TEMPR's number on it. So, a lot of questions need to be answered, but we're going to have to wait just a few minutes. We got another short break for you. When we come back, it's the decider between Outlast and TEMPR. And welcome back to the third and final map of the night between Outlast and Temper for the Xenon Gaming Series Spring Burst. This is an elimination matchup, so about an hour or so, one of these teams will be done for the group stage and they'll be out of the tournament completely. My name is Navical, being joined by It's Goose, and we are very pleased to bring you what's been a really exciting matchup.
Yeah, exciting nonetheless. As we've said many times, if you're now just joining in, going into this matchup with the maps, you know, we said if this went to the third map, if this went to Nighthaven, that Temper didn't have a good matchup because Outlast, if you're not aware, not only do they have a 5-0 record going completely flawless on this map, they are 2-0 against Temper. While it was against, a relatively different roster, they played against the same core, winning both 8-7 and 7-4 respectively. But after the last match, we're feeling a lot better for Temper, and it's going to be up to Outlast to fix one problem, that being their drone economy and overall intel gaming.
Yeah, and just looking at this map for Nighthaven, I feel really good about Temper's chances, especially if they can get off to a strong start on their defensive half, which of course they'll be starting on. And the bans are going to start rolling through, and it's going to be Flores off the board first. And I actually like that ban coming out from Temper because of the fact that you see areas on this map, especially on that top floor, where the Flores can be so crucial for clearing out a position such as IT or Pillar. And so it's going to limit the destruction, or at least the explosive utility that Outlast have available to them when they go for their attacks. And the Ying off the board makes sense as well. It's the most banned operator through the entire Spring Burst, and with good reason so.
And the thing for Outlast is, with your drone problem, you now have Monty being able to use, and now Solus is also being banned. That is a direct ban to solve your problem of your drones being completely just shot out and just being denied. While Solus wasn't ran relatively that much by Temper when they were on the defense, it's still, an effective measure to make sure, it's a little bit easier. And, paired with that, with the Monty on board and now Tubarao gone, you don't have to worry about all of that utility. Outlast, they have everything set up to have an easier time to drone. But the thing is, with Nighthaven, it is such a big map. If you lose a first engagement as an attacker to a roamer off site, it is a lot harder than, a more interconnected map like Clubhouse, like Border, where your overall clears are a lot closer to the site itself.
Well, and I believe we might have a pause for a second, but just looking at this map as a whole, just looking at the top floor, and I mean, we're going to have that Azami on the board. Of course, we're going to have Azami and Fenrir available to both teams. So it's going to enable a lot of those long lines of sight towards the areas like command to potentially be negated by the defense, and it's going to enable Temper to have a lot more of a defensive stronghold. The good news is for Outlast, at least initially, is that they're showing a lot of utility to try and deal with that. You've got that Ash and really the Ace that can also contribute to helping deal with those Kibo barricades.
And I don't like to contribute, a team winning or having success based to one player. But if that one player getting those kills, having a very good game, is your entry player, it does matter. For example, Drix. In the first map, he didn't relatively have, a bad game. But, his overall entry game, it wasn't that positive. He wasn't that, exploding player that always won those entry engagements. He's had some trouble. But going in the second map, because he was just completely wiping Outlast in those first entry engagements and being that star player, being the top kill player, they had immense success. Sure, it doesn't win Temper games, it just makes it indefinitely easier for them to win rounds. And it's just, honestly, the question is if Drix will continue to show up, or if Outlast, can really just have an answer back for his really big game last map.
About 30 seconds in, and Outlast are still mostly outside of the building. You saw Vipoa starting to create a cutoff on the garage area, make it a little bit harder to rotate through warehouse for the side of Timber if they decide to go a little bit more of a vertical play, potentially try to play down below. They don't have any C4s available to them. You saw Schmitty burn one of those out earlier and did some damage to Rai. A lot more of that execute utility is not going to be available to the defense later on. Really, the main thing you have to stop and execute is going to be that Warden, and it's not really any utility to try and help it. That's more just the fact that you have those glasses who can deny something like a smoke grenade, but there are none available for Outlast. The only thing that can really help out with that Warden is the shotgun, and, well, yes, there are some flashes that it can help him out, but still, Outlast, just a minute in, they still haven't really done much. Temper doing a really good job of stalling, despite not even really showing that much aggression.
I really like this power position held by Floofs with that shotgun, in his secondary SMG 12. he's in a very powerful position. So far, he's not been dealt with it, but Outlast, you have that Buck, you have Zonky on the DMR with the actual Dokkaebi calls. They have everything they need to push this operator out. And so far, HUD also not being dealt with. Outlast not necessarily getting in too many engagements because TEMPR hasn't really been playing into it a whole lot.
And you can see Outlast are finally starting to clear out this E-box position. You've got Vipoa down below as well as a player outside of the E-box position, and they're finally going to get the confirm down below. HUD's going to fall. Actually, no, the E-box player is still alive, and Juve is going to be punished for it. They've punished HUD on the pillar position, but still trading down to a 4 versus 4, and it's going to enable Flus to get a little bit more aggressive and try and secure his position on the top of water stairs. So with just 45 seconds left, Outlast need to work their way in, but they have no idea about the player on pillar. But still, it's going to be Vipoa to find another pick, and it's going all the way of the attack as Hectic takes an untimed swing, and the player is ready for it now, just up to Floops and Drix to try and hold things out. Now, Drix has been able to survive for most of the round, in fact, all of the round at this point, so he's had those Kiva barricades positioned to try and help him out. Just 25 seconds left, and Outlast are going to start working their way into the site. They have the player in the position, and they're going to start going for the plant. They have the coverage of Austin, and well, Floops is going to swing and find a pick and potentially start to bring it back a little bit, but now it's a post plant. It's all up to the final 2 members of TEMPR to try and work their way in, but the cutoffs are good. They have players deep back with these long lines of sight to try and shut him down, and no, Vipoa is going to find another one as Floops swings and the shotgun doesn't quite connect, and it's going to be Austin to shut down the final player as Drix falls inside of IT, and Outlast comes back in with a statement round to start things off on Nighthaven.
Outlast finding an answer finally to that intel problem we saw on border. And you were thinking, well, Monty's up. Surely they solved that problem by just, pushing a Monty directly onto the site and onto these defenders. But no, it was actually the Buck below getting vertical. While they still had a whole lot of drone intel, and that did help them, Buck clearing out these positions below, pushing out these defenders from TEMPR, gave Outlast a really good understanding of the only positions that were not pushed out from Buck that TEMPR could have been playing, and because of that, they understood and expected where these TEMPR players would swing and hold to try to push off Outlast. And overall, honestly, that is, in my opinion, the best way Outlast could just respond to the intel problem, is not only to rather not get more intel, but actually force TEMPR into positions that Outlast wants them in.
Yeah, and you saw that a lot with that Buck, like you mentioned. Vipoa doing a very good job from down below, and I have a feeling that TEMPR might read into that this round and emphasize a lot more of their player presence down below to try and halt that ingress and even make it a little bit harder for Vipoa to actually force those players out of those power positions. But kind of have to see, because they brought out pretty much the exact same lineup for the same site that we just saw. And the question isn't this time, do TEMPR decide to be a little bit more aggressive? Because overall in the last round, they really were passive, and you saw players like Schmitty just situated behind a shield inside of E-Box, not swinging unless he had to. And while it did end up costing TEMPR in the most part, it really just came down to the fact that while they were being so passive, they ended up choosing to be aggressive at the exact wrong times.
Also, a whole lot of utility being brought into, that Raptors and warehouse position. And, yet again, sure, we're not seeing a whole lot of utility being used just yet. Drix waiting for his zombie charges to regain and recharge to, potentially use them. Or continuing Outlast to just not really play into that warehouse position. Surely they open the wall, just to apply some phantom pressure, make TEMPR judge, once or twice if there is a player holding that wall. But they don't have too many utility. They don't have drones. They have no players over on warehouse side, and they're relatively doing the same exact push. Not only because it worked, but because TEMPR had absolutely no answer in their micro plays, and they continue to have no answer.
I mean, once again, TEMPR just sitting all the way back near the site and giving us so much of this map control for free to the side of Outlast. And you can see they've already gotten the connector breach open. They're working their way in down below once again. Pretty much the exact same round we saw from last time. It's pretty much an exact same clone because of the fact that you've got Zonky and likely Vipoa rotating down below to try and force HUD off of that pillar position. And while you do, yes, have the push in from connector as well, they don't necessarily have a lot to try and force this player out. I mean, you've got the flashes, sure, and maybe the Zofia to help out with that, but like we saw in the last round, Smitty was allowed to sit here for a very long time. So C4 is going to go out, not going to connect, but still, a lot of time being wasted by this spot.
Yeah, Buck continuing to do exactly what he did before, and TEMPR bringing somewhat of the same lineup, same defensive hold from before, and these players are continuing to be punished. But with a minute left, Outlast, the Buck rather, has not found an answer, but it's actually Flukes to go down below and be the first one to find the answer. Drix also backing it up. Right trading an output with a minute or 50 seconds left. Outlast now find themselves in the man disadvantage with no sight control.
You might ask yourself, Stealth, how much utility does it take to clear a player out of the E-box position? And my response to you would be a lot. They took up all his Ophia's utility. They took out an EMP and they took out a Gone 6 to try and clear it out as finally Outlast comes alive with 30 seconds left, and they find 2 picks to put the man advantage back in their favor, and they're just in the site once again. It's all up to HUD now in the 1 versus 2. Make it a 1 versus 1. How about that? He finds 2 big picks on the players inside a pillar. The bulletproof camera spotting out the Thermiters. Rai and HUD are just playing ring around the rosy near this IT position. HUD going for a run out. He has no idea where Rai is, but with just 15 seconds left, he's going to have to bait this player into his position. Rai should not lose this because the player's outside, and he will not. It came down to a 1 versus 1 when it shouldn't have had to, but nonetheless, the Thermite, the support, stays cool under pressure and wins the round for Outlast.
A lot of people questioning what HUD was doing in that situation. He was kind of just expecting that Thermite to just go for the plant, just be worried that HUD was going to be too aggressive and just overswing. But that last player on Outlast just played that perfectly. He realized, I know when and where he's going to swing. I'll just push up, he'll hear me, and then he'll swing. And that's exactly what he did. Outlast initially down 2-man in a 3v5, but the thing is, TEMPR, with that Buck vertical play, they understood and they eliminated some of the possible positions that TEMPR could have had. And the thing is, when TEMPR was pushed out of those positions, they didn't eventually go back and retake those positions when they got the man count. And because of that, Outlast continued to have an understanding of how the site was set up. Eventually, you did see HUD in that, kind of like snaky power position in Workshop, and he was able to get 2 kills off of that. But then he backed it up with a running outside, I'm going to hope he just misses his shots play, which wasn't the smartest, but, if I'm him in that situation, not much else I could have done.
I mean, it was an interesting and potentially a good idea for me. I just don't think he ran far enough away because of the fact that there was still, 10 seconds left for Rai to find him and finish him off, and he ended up having to go over that swing, which didn't end up going too well for him. But we're going to rotate downstairs for the first time in this map, and a lot of focus being put on the site itself this time for TEMPR because you've got the Mirror, you've got the Bandit as well to try and make it a lot harder for you to open up something like the Animus Breach or even really the main storage breach as well. You can see, however, that Outlast are being very quick with their take. They've got a lot of control on the top floor, and even Rai working his way into the main floor. He's going to get punished by Drix, but still a good idea and a good attempt to try and force some map control.
Drix finally finding the very first entry pick for his team, having a little bit of trouble because he necessarily wasn't put in the position, but on the roam he's put most definitely in the position, and now he's finally found it. Outlast are slowed down a little bit, but that doesn't stop them from still taking a lot of map control and vertical control. But the problem is they're somewhat just ignoring the glaring problem that there are still 3 players roaming rather. 1 player will rotate downstairs, but still holding this position at bottom cargo, even denying lines of sight, and TEMPR not only doing a great job of wasting time, but if Outlast decide to hit the site, they have all the players and all the intel to just completely retake, and Drix continues to back up his plays. It's actually Yuv and Vipoa to back it up and make it a 3v3, eliminating those roamers.
We still have Drix to worry about, and he's been an absolute threat. But once again, we saw this a lot on the second map, and a lot of it comes down to the fact that there's a lot of holes in the drone working the intel game for the side of Outlast. And once again, the Dokkaebi is still on the board. They even had it on the side, and they still are losing players to these roamers. You see that Hectic is still on the top floor. There's a player on the top floor with 50 seconds left. That should not be happening at this point in the game, especially because of the fact that you've had this happen so often before. And now he's going to have to rotate downstairs, and he knows that there's a player inside of command. And, well, he potentially has the read, at least the ace does, that there's a player still above, but they have no idea where the Fenrir is gone. And Drix, still just situated on this power position inside a tank, is going to make it an absolute nightmare situation if the drop comes in from the hatches. There's 30 seconds left now, and finally the equalizer is going to come in, as it's going to be Austin has shut down that roamer. Now the final two members on the site are going to have to try and hang on. I believe we're going to see an Animus drop come in here as the ace is just getting into position. It's actually going to be a split take by these attackers. And Barricade's going to give away his position, his intent, and he's going to go for the reload, and it's going to punish him in the form of most of his HP. Drix is going to shut him down, and it's going to be all up to Juve in the 1 versus 2. Just 10 seconds left. His health bar getting eaten away by the Mira. And here comes the rotate. Juve does find one, but just 3 seconds left. No diffuser in his hand, so he's going to run out of time, and TEMPR are finally going to get on the board.
The difference in that round wasn't, overall how they TEMPR was playing well. They did change it up. It was just the site and how you had to play it. The first 2 rounds, Outlast didn't have to deal with a lot of roam presence. A lot of those TEMPR players were playing a lot closer to site because that's usually how you have to play. There's a lot of vertical walls. You have to play closer to site to deny those hard breach operators from getting those hard breach walls open. But when you go down below, I wouldn't say you're forced to, but it's definitely, a smart idea to roam. And again, we're seeing Outlast struggle with clearing out those roaming positions. The first 2 rounds, they won it relatively easily because they didn't have to deal with a huge roam presence. But because they were attacking a site with a big roam presence, we continued to see that problem of droning those roaming players out yet again.
I mean, question I have for them is what is being done to try and address it? Because once again, the initial indication from Outlast is they don't have a lot to help them in the intel game. The only thing really being initially the line, but they are going to bring the Dokubi. I mean, I hate to say it, but at this point, it just kind of feels like a wasted pick because of the fact that they're not putting a lot of emphasis on that roam clear and that intel. They haven't had much impact from the Dokubi, so maybe try and use it to dedicate your operator line to maybe something a little bit more aggressive, maybe something to help you with more of a direct site take. But you do still have some of that, thankfully, in the form of that Capitao. So just not sure what the plan is from Outlast.
Yeah, it's because I don't think they necessarily understand how they need to really assess and attack this roam. The first 2 rounds, we saw no roam presence, and yet again, on our 4th round, we're seeing a very heavy roam presence being brought out, and Outlast in the early round, I wouldn't say not necessarily having a problem yet because they haven't attacked it, but it doesn't look like they have a really generally good idea of how they want to attack it. And as I say that, we can see 2 players in the hallway just trying to go directly to site, just trying to eliminate even having to deal with those roamers. But the problem is, if those roamers are in a good position to retake the site, they are, but it looks like they're actually hitting the site very fast. And as I say that, yes, it is. It's awesome to get the plant down, but it's been traded back to a 4v4.
And that Echo's going to do such a good job there of shutting that down. The perfect read from the side of TEMPR on the fact that the execute was coming in, but it's not going to matter as finally the Dokubi provides a little bit of importance to the round, and he's going to shut down one before it's equalized back to a 3 versus 3. Juve has the position to hold the cutoff, but the player at the bottom of the waterfall stairs has potentially the better read, as it's going to be the Dokubi working his way down below, trying to deal with the pulse. They have the perfect position on the call, and there's the flank from Hectic. They shut him down on the retake, and they have more information on a player still inside of the site. The rush and the direct execute from Outlast has failed miserably, at least to this point. Outlast need to find a pick quickly to try and give themselves a little bit more room to get this plant down, but the retake still from TEMPR has been very strong. They have the perfect read on these cutoffs. Not sure if Outlast are going to be able to bring this back.
With a minute left, they're only down a man, but they have no intel. In TEMPR, they have all the intel they need. We're just seeing Vipoa just, flashing out, trying to flood out these players. And with 50 seconds left, Vipoa will be able to get the bomb down, but you have both HUD and Hectic ready for the retake. Hectic is shot down. HUD gets a big 2-piece, and now in the post-plant situation, he's in a 1v1. It's going to be all up the floofs with the shotgun, and Rai realizes what he needs to do, how he needs to play the situation, falling back so he doesn't... Wait, no, Floofs puts up the shield, so hopefully block himself, and it's the shotgun to win him out that close engagement, and now tie it up 2-2 for TEMPR.
Yeah, pistol versus shotgun, not going to go well there. The beautiful bait by the shield from Floofs. He actually took it down to try and force the engagement there from the thermite, and it worked beautifully. I mean, still, the question is how was Outlast allowed to get that plant down? You had the Echo on the board, and who was even the last one alive. Did Outlast find both of those yokai drones? Just not sure what happened there, but still, beautiful attempt by OUTLAST to at least try and get that back. And once again, we see them struggling with the information game when they aren't allowed to hit directly onto the site, because of the fact that when they did try to hit directly onto the site there, they still didn't have any control below or even above, really. And that ended up really being the punishing factor, because of the fact that the pulse was allowed to sit below and feed a lot of information over to the defense as to what was happening.
And we are seeing it after 2 rounds where Outlast was forced to address that roaming presence off site. It didn't work. And surely, in the favor for Outlast, TEMPR is going to be going back to that first initial bomb site in servers, but because Outlast has identified the problem, they're going to be bringing out that Monty that we talked a lot about, and, sure, they're good with it, but it's a direct response in not being able to, address that roaming presence and address the, lack of intel in the drones that are being shot out consistently by TEMPR.
And finally, we see the Montang being brought out by OUTLAST. They didn't have it available to them on the last map, but that was by their own doing. So finally realizing that, hey, maybe this Montang is what we need to try and gain some map control and some more information in our favor. And while they didn't bring it on the sites where they really struggled with it, they're still bringing it on a site where they've had success attacking, which indicates that they're likely going to have even more success attacking here because, well, they know how to do it. And now they've brought out what seemingly is that win condition for them. So I want to see kind of how they focus their attack and where they focus to try and use this Montang. Maybe they use it to try and clear out that E-box position, which has really been a struggle with them so far.
Yeah, TEMPR just completely, addressing this site setup and overall, defensive setup completely different. We're seeing more of a roam presence being brought out because, not Outlast, but TEMPR rather has identified that if we just bring a more of a roam presence, it is a huge problem that Outlast cannot deal with. And now, Outlast bringing out those, substitute operators for hard breach, for example, that Maverick, so they can, bring out the Monty. Surely they'll still be able to get wall. They do get wall. Going to need the Buck to rotate around and open it, which he will do now. But the problem is, if they're going to be able to deal with this player in Raptors that they actually haven't necessarily dealt with in the early round in the previous 2 rounds that they attacked the site.
Yeah, those Kilo barricades going to make it so hard for the side of OUTLAST to try and clear out this zombie, but they're actually going to find it as Yov is just down below and in the perfect position to cut off that rotation. And there's that Montang helping out so much. He's able to feed a lot of information as to what's going on with the defense, and it's going to enable OUTLAST to get a lot of that garage control, despite the fact that they have now finally actually droned out HUD on the roam. So they have actually utilized the information to a beautiful way this time, and it's enabled them to finally get an ingress into the site because of the fact that they forced everybody on the side of OUTLAST back, and they found another kill as Austin, I believe from down below, was able to shut down another one. Not sure where that one came from, but it's going to be used as a fluke to trade, and it's going to leave OUTLAST in an even more favorable position. HUD still trying to go for a rotate down below, but he's all alone now in the 1 versus 4, working his way back up on the flank on the garage, and he's not even going to find Rai, who's perfectly aware of his position. And it's going to be OUTLAST to get their 3rd round. They are now 3 for 3 attacking this site. Curious stuff, Goose.
Yeah, that time around, Outlast not addressing that roam presence directly. I wouldn't say they, ignored it, but they played around it. They realized, okay, there's only one player on the side of the Zami, which that player on the side of just continues to play those solo opening engagements. But because they had that intel, because they had drones on Driss, on Raptors, in Warehouse, they had the Monty, and then 2 players with guns to back it up. They were easily cleared him out and then hit site. And because you had roamers like HUD or I believe it was either HUD or Hectic Blow with the Valkyrie, they didn't do a whole lot. They were running around just trying to waste time, but OUTLAST playing around those players were able to just hit site directly, and because, Valkyrie didn't have enough intel to get a C4, lost too many operators, she wasn't able to retake in time, and now OUTLAST, even if they lose this next round, they have a 3-3 attacking half going onto their favorite side, which is the defending side.
Well, no Montang being brought this time for OUTLAST, and I feel like that would have been a big enabler for them because the fact that we're back on this basement defense. And with that, they have the Zero, they have the Ram, a lot of vertical and roam clearing operators actually enabled here by LS. And I really like this adaptation. You've got the Jackal, you've got the Dokri, and you've even got the Zero to try and help you with this huge problem that has been your lack of information and your lack of roam clear. We've seen them struggle so early on, at least when they attacked it last time, with the fact that there were roamers who went on drones, such as Hectic, who was able to find Pix working his way back from Garage. So they're going to start to work their way in from the top and do a full top-down clear. They don't want to make any mistakes this time, and really, it's a really good thing to see.
It is really good. Outlast has seemed to not only identify their main problem, which it is a very easy problem to identify. It is like head on, right in their face, but they have fixed it. They've gone 3 rounds and they're continuing to apply pressure, but they haven't won this site yet. And so far, with a minute left, they haven't lost that initial engagement. You still have Schmitty, and you still have Hectic on this roam. Drix in this power position, who's playing right before, but by Poa, not only does he get the first initial engagement, but he gets 2 big ones. And sure, he is traded back by Drix, but Zonky is in the position to get that refrag and play the picks. And this is what I said Outlast needed to do. They needed to be aggressive, but have the actual, players behind those initial entry players to back them up. In Austin, just having a great line of sight, and Outlast just completely choking out the defense, and rather the roam of TEMPR.
And that Jackal really seeming to be that big assist to that problem that they had been facing. A C4 is going to finish off Zonky, and the retake from HUD's going to come in towards Tank as the Animus drop is coming in. Flash grenades going out, and a beautiful shot while blind for HUD. He's made this a lot more manageable for him. A second, how about a third? It's a 1 versus 1 now. HUD, with a shotgun in hand, has the read on the fact that the final player is above. He only needs 1 more to complete the 1v4 clutch and give TEMPR the tied half. Austin trying to put Outlast in as favorable a position as possible. The drop has finally come in from the 0. He has the right read on the fact that the player is rotated away towards the site. The plant's going to come in as well, trying to potentially bait out HUD. The shotgun at long range is not going to quite do him any favors, though, however. And it's going to be Austin, despite the best efforts of the Mirror, to shut him down. And it's going to be Outlast taking a much more favorable half, 4-2 on the attack.
We were initially a little bit worried, and we can see the players from Outlast getting, a little angsty in that chat, but that was just a great shutdown in the round. Not only did they have the drone economy, but when they droned these players out, they had a player behind that drone, and they were able to not only find the players, but use that actual player, use the drones to turn that into a pick, and relatively quickly. It wasn't 30, it wasn't 40 seconds after, it was 5 to 15 seconds after they found that player. It was quick and structured aggression, and not only that, when they had those players, he was eventually traded back by Drix, but Outlast had those support players droning behind them, right behind them, ready to get that trade. And when you get 2 picks, sure, you trade it back, but there's a player right behind that player you just killed, ready to shoot you in the head. And that's exactly how Outlast have now found themselves up 2 rounds going on the defense.
And I mean, I don't necessarily want to give it to Outlast on the fact that they potentially fixed their information problem, but that was a really good sign for them. They figured out what was causing them to have problems on the attack, and they brought the appropriate operators. They made the appropriate adjustments to their attacking strategy to actually deal with it. We saw them go for that full roam clear, and it ended up, like we saw, working out pretty well for them. And well, despite the best efforts from HUD, they were able to convert that into a round win, and a significant advantage for them. And now heading on to the defense, they brought out a lot of wall denial here. You don't see this too often anymore, combining the bandit and the cage, just because you need a lot of other forms of denial and a lot more utility to be brought amongst the other operators. So having a lot of that is going to put a lot of stress on the side of TEMPR to try and get these walls open. The good news is they do have plenty of hard breach, and thankfully they got a Thatcher as well.
TEMPR bringing out 2 very aggressive players to identify with these power positions that Outlast is bringing out. You have Drix not only being that first player to be in those initial entry engagements, but now he has the Grim to push out and maybe give intel, and then Floofs to back up and push off that intel. I really like what they have set up here, and relatively, in a timely fashion, they're going to get these walls open. And as I say that, Drix continues to win these opening engagements, and surely we've seen, as it's repeated, if Drix continues to win these open engagements, if he continues to show up, it makes it easier for TEMPR to win these late round executes.
Well, like you said, that Warden being off the board is going to be a really crucial blow to the side of Outlast, because of the fact that you don't have anything really to deal with that blitz, and a lot of that utility being brought out by TEMPR. You've got those smokes and you got the flashes in the back pockets of Smitty and Floofs to try and assist with that blitz push when it does come. And TEMPR might be indicating the fact that they're really ready to get aggressive, because of the fact that Well, they've got all of the breaches open. They got a lot of avenues into the building as well. And well, the bad news for Outlast is they don't have much utility to try and slow them down. The only thing they really had to try and deny a plant is going to be that C4 in the pocket of Rai. Austin already using his, and other than that, you don't have much. You don't have any toxic babes. You don't have any echoes or anything like that. So you're gonna have to rely a lot on just watching these angles and relying on your gun skill. And we've seen that kind of fail in the past because of the fact that they don't have the information. Drone's gonna come in for TEMPR to try and figure out where these defenders are playing. And well, you do have Zonky down below to potentially deny things. And well, the camera inside of IT is going to be destroyed, actually, by the C4. A little bit of a mistimed play there by Rai. And now it's all up to the guns for the side of Outlast. Just 30 seconds left. TEMPR are seemingly a little bit scared here. They're just sitting outside of the building. They want to go for a garage take, but they don't necessarily have the opening to work for it. And Zonky's finally going to find the equalizer. Bipoa has the right read on the player inside of water, and he's going to get down as well. It's all falling apart for the side of TEMPR. It's all up to Hectic now in the 1 versus 2 as he's in the site, but he doesn't have any information. He doesn't have a perfect read, and the crossfire is too good from Austin. He's going to shut that down, and Outlast widen their lead.
I'm sorry. I just love how Austin just stared at that player for a second and just didn't realize he was an attacker. And honestly, that slow reaction time, let's compare it to how TEMPR played that round. Sure, they got that initial first entry, but after that, they played really slow. They didn't build off that entry. They didn't get a whole lot of map control. They didn't even get control of Raptors and Warehouse until the last minute to 40 seconds. In Outlast, sure, they were down a man, but because TEMPR was so slow, they were allowed to just reset up their overall, lines of sight, where their positions were for their players in sight. And it honestly just allowed Outlast to be comfortable. And TEMPR, yet again, like we saw in the very first map, it kind of just looked like they were sitting and waiting for Outlast to over-aggress rather. But Outlast, realizing that they didn't need to, played back and waited for TEMPR, and TEMPR just, yet again, finding and just completing those early or rather late problems they had in the first map.
A lot of trap operators being brought out this time by Outlast. You've got an operator that you don't really see a lot. At least not as much as initially when she got in the form of Thorn. You've got those Razor Blooms potentially deny a little bit of an entrance in, and maybe a direct counter to the fact that TEMPR showed the Blitz in the first round. Not going to be present this time, however, so it's not going to be quite as deadly, but still very deadly because you've also got that Cap Cannon, a Legion to worry about. Just a lot of denial to try and force TEMPR, an already seemingly passive team, to try and be a lot more careful and use a lot more time with going for their clears and just overall executes.
TEMPR getting these 2 walls open relatively quickly, making sure they change that problem of their slowness. But the thing is, it wasn't in the early round. The early round was relatively quick, and they're continuing to make sure that their, overall, basics, getting wall open, droning is quick. And with a minute left, they've gone the 2 walls open, but they still have to push out these players like Austin on the roam, and you have Rai upstairs in the exact same position that Outlast was having trouble clearing out when they first attacked this bomb site when they were attacking. And the thing is, right now, with a minute 50, sure, you have a lot of time, but you don't have a lot of players on the side of TEMPR in a position to push out these roamers.
Just about a minute in, and so far, TEMPR have done a pretty good job of actually clearing out the utility and getting themselves an avenue into the site. They've got that main breach open into assembly, as well as the fact that they've started dealing with some of the shields being brought out by players such as Hughes. And look at this, TEMPR just completely bypassing the roam clear, working their way, walking all the way into Animus, and they've got the crossfires, they've got the lines of sight on the players inside of Nano, and they're just going to walk their way into Tank. He's going to get shut down from long range, though, by Yu, who's just situated inside the site. And from above as well, another one falls as Austin has the read on Drix, and Austin is absolutely in the perfect position to try and deny this. Floofs finally is able to get one, but he's no longer. And another one falls to Rai. It's all up to Hectic once again. Still a minute to work with, but in pretty much the same situation we saw him in the last round. And TEMPR now, he's going to have to try and find these players. Otherwise, they're going to be on match point, and that's not a position they want themselves in this early on.
Yeah, with 50 seconds left, that was on purpose. TEMPR wanted to go for a direct site execute. I talked about how they didn't have any players on the position to push out those roamers, and that wasn't because of their due diligence. It wasn't because they didn't know where they were. They understood that they had a roam presence, and they wanted to take advantage of that and hit site quick. But the problem was they didn't flush out these players, these 2 players in sight that were holding the crossfires, and because of that, not only were they punished, but they also had the players upstairs playing vertical that also just denied them. For example, Rai holding a just really good vertical hold on default attack, and it's just Temper, in my opinion, being a little lazy. And because they didn't do their due diligence, because they didn't clear their roamers, not only did they have to deal with the lines of sight being held by the anchors on site, but you also had people above shooting you on top of your head. It's just somewhat impossible because you just didn't set yourself up for a successful site execute.
Well, looking at what potentially could be the final round of this game, and well, Denver really have a lot of work cut out for them. They've got to win 4 attacks in a row on this map, and you're seeing exactly why we were worried for Temper when we came into this map, because it seems like, and it's showing once again, Outlast have had their number. Temper haven't really done a good job of actually forcing out the issue when it comes down to the execute. We've seen them in the last round at least bypass a lot of that roam clear. While they've done some good stuff in the beginning of the rounds, they didn't really have the control they needed to go for that execute into tank. And you saw it was Austin, I believe, up above in storage, who had the perfect read to shut that down. So we need to see Timber do a little bit better of a job with their information game, which is something that surprisingly we were seeing from Outlast, and they seemingly have now fixed that, bringing operators like the Echo.
Echo going to give them an intel, and we talked about the lack of intel, Temper shooting out the intel. It just wasn't on attack only. It was somewhat of a problem, not as much on defense. But Outlast, well, it hasn't been a problem. They're bringing out these operators, like Rai, to make sure it isn't a problem they'll have in the future. They're solving problems before they even happen, and it just goes to show how comfortable Outlast is and how they're just always one step ahead because Temper isn't making them uncomfortable. Temper is playing a relatively simple game, trying to do simple pushes, simple site executes without doing the base work of clearing out those roamers, setting up the intel, setting up the crossfires, and because of that, Outlast is not only able to fix the problems that they have in front of them, but problems they may face in the future.
Well, just about a minute in, and so far, Temper, they've started to get open the garage breaches, and they're starting to work their way into IT as well. That IT position is so important when attacking onto this storage site because of the fact that, well, it's right above the site itself, and a lot of that floor is destructible, so you need to make sure that you clear it out and allow the players such as the Buck to work your way in, try and get some of that control from above, and try and make it a little bit harder for a player such as Rai to play a little bit safer in the site and use those Echo drones to try and stall your late round push. But, I mean, you have a lot of these Keepa barricades to try and deny it as well, so Temper, you need to get somebody over there, hopefully Drix, to try and deal with that and give them a little bit of an easier time into this building.
I really love the position from Vipoa and Rai down below. It's not necessarily a roaming position, but just rather holding. And speaking of, Austin is taken out by Hectic. Hectic getting a big double kill, and now Outlast find themselves in a 3v5, but not only that, Rai and Vipoa, and on top of that, Yuv are forced to rotate back upstairs, and honestly, it looks like they've just lost all of the upstairs control, and with a minute left, Outlast is able to get a kill back, but Temper has everything in the position where they might not be aware of Rai with these drones.
Well, Outlast seemingly have a little bit more going for themselves, and you can see Yub going for a rotate down to try and get himself in a little bit better of a position. He's got that C4 to potentially assist his team in the later portions of the round. They've got that Echo to try and give themselves a little bit more information as well. Luke's going to be the one that needs to work his way into the site to try and get that plant down, but I don't think they have any idea that Vipoa is just situated in the bottom of warehouse. So he's going to be allowed to sit there and just deny the entrance when it comes in for Temper. Just 20 seconds left, and well, they haven't really started to complete their way down to the bottom floor. And actually, no, it's going to be the plant coming in. The play from the Cade is read beautifully. Flukes is going to be able to get this down. But no, the C4 down below. Yub is in the perfect position. And with the Echo, Yokai's still alive. It's going to make it even harder. He is in the perfect position to deny this and send Outlast away with the win. They have no idea. With just 2 seconds left, the denial should come in here. Drix getting that plant down. Where's the Yokai drone? Where is the coverage? No, Rai off the drone, and the plant's going to go down. It's going to be Temper to just hold the angles now and watch their way in. But Rai has potentially found a gap. He indeed has. He's going to work his way in, find one. But Yub has traded it all up to Rai now. The Echo is going to have to do all the work in the post plant. Potentially has the read on the player inside of warehouse, but
diffuser is planted in a way, it's going to be so hard for him to actually get this. He's going to try and sneak it off, however, and I'm not sure if Drix from above is ready, but he is. He's going to swing in and finish him off, and TEMPR, they are going to stay alive for one round longer. Still a long way to go, but the comeback has started.
Yeah, that was initially all in the plan of Outlast. They, in that 3v4, realized, you know what? Okay, we're not going to actually try to directly approach the players pushing site. We're going to fall off. We're going to actually rely on our utility. That utility being that Echo drone paired with that C4. The C4 initially did get that player planting, forcing the last three players on the side of TEMPR to plant with around 9 seconds left. And that last yokai drone, while it didn't work, I'm not sure whether it was, maybe Rai wasn't in the right position. Maybe they shot it. We're not sure. We didn't see in that initial situation. But what we do know is it didn't work. And because their utility they had set up and planned just didn't go to plan. TEMPR, I wouldn't say they directly planned around it, but what TEMPR did bring in that last 20 seconds did not favor what Outlast expected, and they just didn't really expect what TEMPR brought.
When we look ahead to this next round number 10, and TEMPR trying to complete this comeback, and it's going to be a pretty similar lineup from Outlast this time, and it was actually a very solid lineup to do a lot of the stall work, because of the fact that you had some of that wall denial, and like we saw in the previous attempt when TEMPR came and attacked onto this site, they were way too passive in the later portions of the round. They didn't do enough to actually force the issue, but I like some of the changes that they've brought out to potentially try and help them with that. They've got that Grim and they've got that Dokkaebi to make some more, I guess, progress towards potentially not stalling out again. Just about 25 seconds in now, and we haven't seen much from the side of TEMPR. Okay, I was wondering where you went there, my friend.
I did lagged a little bit there, but no, we're back. With a minute left, TEMPR just really looking to just really assess that round. And honestly, they didn't change up too much in how they approached that. I wouldn't say they were lucky, but in that situation, they were just able. Actually, I guess you could say they were lucky that Outlast, relied more on the utility than their actual, man-to-man gunfights, which in that situation, how TEMPR was playing, it just really favored them.
Just about a minute in now, and still all 5 players left from Outlast, and it's a much better start for them, at least, than it was the previous time we came here, because the fact that they lost Juve early on to an engagement on the back of Water Stairs, and Vipoa is still alive as well, to try and make it a little bit harder for TEMPR to potentially go for a garage clear. And you can see Drix has kind of a read on the fact that he might want to do it. He's going to be felled early on. The Grim Bee is going to go out, and Vipoa for a huge double on the top of Rafters, and he's going to very well stunt this TEMPR attack. That's your main hard breacher, your main execute operator off the board as well. Finally, something comes back for the side of TEMPR, but 2 minutes of the round are gone. They are now scrambling to try and make something happen. They don't even have the IT breach open yet. A lot of work to do for them.
Yeah, a lot of work, and not only do you have your main hard breach operator down, sure you have Ace, he has about 2 of his charges, but he's not in position to open that wall, and on top of that, you have Drix, who is your, main fragger, your main entry player, and on top of that, he has a lot of utility with that Grim gadget that is now gone, and not only that, but TEMPR are not in a position to actually catch any players on the side of Outlast off guard, and TEMPR have to be the one to actually push and get these engagements, and it's just not working. Yuv getting yet another kill, going really big in this round, by Poa actually rather big, and they're just forced to dry swing in this 4v2.
This is such a scary situation for TEMPR because of the fact that, well, that time is such a crippling factor. It's going to end up getting a lot worse. This is all up to HUD. Now the Ace to try and clutch things out on the 1 versus 4, make it a 1 versus 3. He's able to find something for his trouble, but that bulletproof camera giving away his position. Just 15 seconds left, and it's not going to go over him. The swing in from the Azami, the Vipoa player on the top of Raptors, is going to end things off. It's going to be Outlast to secure the game, the 2-1 win. Condolences to TEMPR. They'll be going home, but this is why you do not take Outlast to Nighthaven. Now 6-0 on this map. Beautifully played by them. They will face SBL tomorrow to qualify for the Spring Burst playoffs.
A great comeback, not only just in the round count, but just overall how Outlast played that. And TEMPR, while they did have a great second map, they just cannot deal with how Outlast play Nighthaven. And as we predicted, Nighthaven went swiftly, rather, to Outlast. a really great showing, and honestly, what you want to see from them going into their promotion match, playing a team that it's a very good team and a team they have to deal with that's not going to give them a lot more lenience that TEMPR may have today.
Well, like we said, Outlast, that was very much a statement map for them, and they, like we said, prove why this is their best map, and that's now TEMPR losing 3 times on that map, and I have to think that that map ban phase might be something that TEMPR ends up regretting from this game, despite the best efforts of a player like Drix, who we saw on map 2 go absolutely nuclear, and even on this map as well, he had himself a fantastic game. He dropped double-digit kills, and still, just it didn't seem to go their way, despite the fact that Outlast seemingly, after map 1, really struggled overall in the intel game. I wonder what they're going to do heading into their game tomorrow to try and fix that. I mean, obviously we saw them bring something like a Jackal, but you can't always rely on just one operator.
As I said before, you're going against SBL. It's not TEMPR. Sure, it's not, like a T1 caliber team. You have T1 teammates on there, but SBL is not going to give Outlast leniency that TEMPR did. The mistakes that Outlast made today are going to be punished way more and way quicker by SBL. And you have plenty of time. You have a great VOD review. And in my opinion, Outlast played really great. And especially they played a much better Clubhouse than we initially saw in their first group stage game.
Yeah, that Clubhouse game really was exciting. And, well, not only did Outlast figure out a lot of their defensive woes from that first game against Osiris, they figured out a lot of their attacking issues as well. We saw them do really well on the gym attacks, and just overall, a lot of it came down to the fact that they had those more coordinated executes in the final seconds of the rounds, especially in those 5v5 situations. So it really is kind of the sign of a good team, and it's good to see from them. While they still do have some mistakes to figure out, I mean, overall, pretty good showing.
Yeah, no, a really great show. And, to HUD, and to TEMPR, they haven't been playing as long. They look relatively good, and we didn't even expect this to go 2-1. It was supposed to be a 2-0, but they clawed back, but it just wasn't enough.
Well, we have an interview ready with Zonky of Team Outlast, so we'll pop over there and see what he has to say about the game. And Zonky, how you doing this evening, sir? Congratulations on the win.
Good. How about y'all?
Oh, yeah. No, we are absolutely thrilled. You guys treated us to a fantastic game, but just a couple of questions for you. What was the strategic advantage for you guys heading on to Nighthaven, knowing that you'd kind of beaten them and kind of had their number before?
Well, I don't know why they took us to Nighthaven. Like, we 7-1 like every single team in E2 on that map. It beats me, but I don't know. It's HUD. He doesn't like Skyscraper, so I guess that's why.
And just looking back at your border game, was it kind of a surprise to you guys heading into that? I mean, obviously, they kind of seem to have your number on that map, but really was the biggest thing for you guys the fact that you had a little bit of an intel gap with the Monty being banned?
No, not really. We just didn't play like ourselves on border. Like, we played like pussies, basically. Like, we over-aggressed, we under-aggressed most of the time, and when we kind of like started getting our groove, we're down like 6-1 already, bro. Like, it was over.
You think a lot of that had to do potentially with the side and the fact that, I mean, border is really defender-sided nowadays?
No, not really. Like, we're attacker-favoring team. Like, we should be like 4-2 those guys on attack, but it's just whatever.
And just kind of looking back at your Clubhouse game as well, I mean, you guys proved in your opening match of this Spring Burst that you are a pretty strong team when it comes to the attack, especially on Clubhouse. But what did you guys kind of change regarding your defenses that allowed you guys to have a lot more success?
Going to the Osiris game, like, I'm not gonna lie, like, since this team like formed in like last October, we've probably scrimmed Clubhouse like 5 times. So we just started scrimming it more. Like, we did 3 maps before this game today because our schedules are kind of messed up. So we have to fit everything in during the weekends and stuff. So we just started scrimming it like every single day, and we got our defenses down. They're good enough. Like, we play a better team. We probably lose on that map still, but we're gonna get there.
Indeed. And then I'll just give you a second to give kind of a shout out to your fans. Just say hello to all the XGS viewers before we let you go.
What's up, guys? What's up, Mako? I think he's watching. He's like our ghost coach, I guess. And then shout out all the Outlast guys, all the org peoples. And that's
Alrighty,
it.
well,
Thank you.
Zonky, thank you for the sir. We'll let you go and hopefully get some rest. You got a big matchup versus SBL tomorrow, so we'll see you for that. But have a good night, man, and congrats on the win.
Thank you.
All right, Goose. I mean, a lot of interesting stuff to hear from him. I mean, like he said, it seems like they kind of had figured out what went wrong on Clubhouse, and I mean, I think Border might have just been kind of an outlier for them as well.
Oh, no doubt. I think they just were caught off guard and just, how aggressive and just how TEMPR really just played their own game, and they just were not able to fix it. But then going into Nighthaven, as we spoke about, and he was even confused why they took him there, and it really goes to show that they should not have gone there. That was their map. It was always going to be, and it just even goes more and gives more proof that Border was just, as we've all said, a fluke. But nonetheless, a really great game. I love Zonky, going from a YouTuber, even being in the wildcard tryouts, then to making E2. He's grown so much just, as a person and a player. Really love to see the growth. And yet again, as we've said over and over, and as you told Zonky himself, he has a really big boulder ahead of him tomorrow in SBL. And it looks like they have fixed their mistakes and identified what they need to do to fix mistakes, going into games going forward.
Yeah, and just looking back a little bit more, I mean, I kind of am curious as to what that map ban phase was like. Because remember, when we looked at it, they had the option to go to Nighthaven for map number 2 because it wasn't banned out. The main question is why didn't TEMPR ban it early on? And the second question would be, would this have been potentially a 2-0 if it had been our map number 2? I mean, maybe we wouldn't have even seen this kind of fluke that was Border.
Oh yeah, no doubt. We might not have seen it, but yet again, I find it like really curious, or I guess really weird rather, that Outlast just hadn't really scrimmed that much on Clubhouse, and then when they do scrim, they just look completely different. It just goes to show that just like if you actually practice your reps and just really put the time and effort, it goes a long way, and especially a short amount of time too. Sure, they went up against a good team, but at the end of the day, they realized it wasn't the team they were going against. It was them themselves making the mistakes, and they realized they had to fix it, and that's exactly what they did.
And I just got to give a shout out to TEMPR real quick. Just looking back at those replays, Drix had himself a night, especially on Border. I mean, some of the shots he was hitting was absolutely insane, and it's going to be a shame that we won't be able to see them anymore. As remember, they are now eliminated from the Spring Burst, and we'll take a quick moment to recap the brackets and kind of how things have played out so far. Looking at Group A, like we saw, it's going to be Osiris as the first team heading to the playoffs, and like we saw just a moment ago, TEMPR going to be the first team eliminated from this group, and well, that's going to leave us with an absolute banger of a game tomorrow between SBL and Outlast to decide which of these two teams is going to head to the playoffs to face one of our 4 invited teams. But just looking over at Group B, just kind of break down how that went as well earlier today.
Earlier today, Osiris beating out Team SBL 7-5, a relatively even matchup. You can even see in the scoreline, being 7-5. Osiris, I think just, how they play together just, favors each other as individual players. That's why they came out on top. Team SBL bringing in Poison relatively, in recent time. I believe it's not even been 2 weeks. So they're still figuring stuff out. And going into Group B, we have tomorrow Coastal Gaming against Bros Without Hose. Coastal Gaming losing a very close match. Bros Without Hose just completely wiping Wasted Talent 2-0. So a completely just different story on both sides of these brackets. And nonetheless, I think both games tomorrow are just, I would say, evenly matched. Not 50-50, but it's not like one team is 100% going to win. And I'm just really excited.
I'd be really excited to see Coastal Gaming come out of that matchup tomorrow, especially because the fact that, remember, heading into this qualifier and even the Spring Burst as a whole, they came out of nowhere. Like, nobody had really heard of those guys before and had even seen them play as a team. And to see them make it this far and even make it to the decider match is a really impressive feat,
100%.
Especially because if it hadn't been for a few mistakes from Valkyrie yesterday, they could already be in the playoffs and facing one of our 4 invited teams. So a lot of exciting matches and a lot of exciting storylines heading into tomorrow as well.
Yeah, what are you going to do when JJ's going positive? Not much, because now you got to play one more game. But yeah, no, nonetheless, you said it better. Going into tomorrow, I think both teams, even, with, the CBL matchup, versus Outlast, they have all the tools to win. They have figured out I think, in my opinion, relatively the mistakes they go. And I don't think we're going to see any huge glaring mistakes going into these two new matches. So I think even, skill wise, player wise, it may be a little bit unmatched. I think both teams on both sides of the bracket have everything they need to do to push themselves, maybe even to a third map, both games.
Indeed, but that's going to be it for us tonight. We saw two fantastic elimination games today. We've had a really great weekend of Xenon Gaming Siege. Shout out to everybody on the production team over at Xenon. They've done a fantastic job making us look good this weekend. But like I said, that's it for us. We've got one final day to decide which two teams will join everybody else in the playoffs. So be sure to tune in tomorrow for that. But on behalf of myself and Goose, we thank you so much for watching and have a fantastic night.